be a part of this open sky observation, for which you may need to stay by 8 p.m. Then you need to call your parents and you need to make your own arrangements. So this is the news coming up. Otherwise, you need to, let's say, the buses will depart at 6 p.m. sharp. Okay. Meanwhile, now our Girish sir is ready. And there is another, like a big constraint, that is weather constraint. Even if you stay and if weather doesn't permit, so we are sorry, we are helpless like anyone. Okay, so we cannot do anything in that case. Now we are starting with seeing the power of collaboration. Now you can see collaboration, how even teaching has transformed. Now we have collaborative learning, you have peer learning. So similarly, the next presentation will be, you can say, focusing on collaboration, how collaboration is going to frame the new future. I think so, sir. Is it related to that? So now over to our sir, Girish sir, who have really brainstormed us by these two sessions and expecting the same from the third one. A big round of applause for sir.
I just hope that you are not bored of my face. And please excuse me, I am asking your forgiveness in advance. I am actually now stepping into a territory which is new to me. This is the first time I am trying to go out of physics and try to do something in biology. Okay, if anything is wrong, that's only my fault, and hope you don't mind. Okay, so keeping all of them aside, this is the picture of Amazon. Okay, Amazon rainforest. You are all aware of anaconda, other things. So Amazon rainforest covers almost it's twice the size of our entire India. And one thing about that is, yesterday when I was talking, I talked about why moon is so important to Earth or the life, because it acts like a carbon. It actually helped in sinking carbon. Now, if I say that 10% of carbon dioxide or carbon on Earth, Amazon acts like sink, taking it away from the atmosphere. So it is helping a lot to minimize the effect of greenhouse effect. Okay, and in addition to that, almost 10%. Yesterday I mentioned about 8.7 million kinds of species is there on Earth as of now. Out of that, 10%, that is almost like 8.7 lakh species can be found in Amazon. So 10% biodiversity is in only this area. So that is about Amazon. So why I am talking about Amazon? This is the coverage of Amazon. So most of them is in Brazil and covers so many areas. Coming to that, what is this? It's a desert, completely opposite of what Amazon is. Yes, this is Sahara Desert. Okay, Sahara Desert. Okay, Sahara Desert covers Egypt, Algeria, Libya, and this is a complete coverage of Sahara. And compared to Amazon, Sahara is here, separated by, what is this? Sea, Atlantic Ocean. So there is almost 5,000 kilometers gap between Amazon and Sahara. Can you think of any connection between the two? Can you think of some connection between Amazon and Sahara? A desert and a rainforest. If I say without, please. Okay. If I say, if Sahara is not there, Amazon might end up completely destroying itself. How many of you will believe in that? Okay, sorry. Because I'm saying that so many. So I'm just telling you that one live forest 5,000 kilometers away from a dead desert depends on desert for its survival. So that is the kind of things nature keeps on throwing at us. This is a kind of collaboration I'm going to be talking in my talk next. mutualism, nature's hidden partnership. So the word hidden is not exactly hidden because we ourselves come across these kind of mutualism everywhere, but we don't, as I mentioned earlier, we don't observe. We simply see and walk away from there. So my talk is going to be on mutualism. Mutualism can also be expressed in multiple ways. Mutualism, where both of the collaborators are helping for the party. Symbiosis, where one is completely dependent on the other. Without that, they will not exist. The movie Venom. Co-evolution, one party has completely, or both of them completely changed their even look and other genetic things just to support the partnership going. And then teamwork, I'll come to the teamwork later because nowadays it's the buzzword. Everybody wants to be involved, like a part of the teamwork. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in beyond. For me, it is beyond physics. So what is collaboration in nature? One is mutualism, as I mentioned earlier. Here, both the species contribute in some way. I am putting a picture of humans. Yesterday, when Madam was talking about biology, she talked about some beneficial bacteria. How many of you remember that? Beneficial bacteria, gut bacteria. Your, how many of you know that your tongue, if you by chance see under microscope, you will never sleep again? How many of you know that there are millions and millions of bacteria staying on your like on your tongue? You know the funny thing, without them you can't even taste. You will not find the taste without those bacteria, right? Something similar to that. There are a lot of things, I don't know whether you can read them. Lactobacillus, lacto and rhizo, all these things. What is lacto? What is lacto? Milk. Something similar to milk. Okay, lacto. Why I have written bacteria there? Because after our child, after birth, after few months of lactate, this one breastfeeding, we lose the we lose our the what is that word I'm forgetting, ability to actually digest milk. We lose our ability to digest milk. So the only way we can digest milk is through this bacteria. So this we call it as good bacteria. And whatever what is whatever Kajol Agrawal is actually selling to you, probacteria, probiotics. Have you heard of that probiotics? It's nothing but whatever is there in curd. Instead of that, you can actually eat curd every day and get the similar amount. So that also falls under this probiotics. So these are all comes under good bacteria where both species benefit from the partnership. So the what is happening? Humans are by eating, they are actually getting their things digested, and the same food bacteria also uses. So in both way, it is helpful, mutual. That's why it's good bacteria. All the bacteria in our body are good? No. Some of them are bad bacteria. In these cases, some of them are harmful. I'm even though harmful, I'm just putting it as common system where one species benefits from the others without actually harming them. But some of these bacteria is harmful, particularly E. coli. You have heard of E. coli, right? That's the one responsible for cholera. Okay, there are some bacteria which are not beneficial, but they are like parasites. They depend on us without actually contributing anything to partnerships. That is called commensalism. Then comes co-evolution, where one species changes itself to help the partnership going. So, have you do you know this plant? Pitcher plant, fantastic. What does pitcher plant does? It eats the insects. A plant eating the insects. Wow, I never knew that. Okay, now this pitcher plant eats the insects. What is a mosquito? It's an insect, right? But you know the funny thing? Mosquitoes love this. They actually grow here. They lay their eggs and the larvae become good in pitcher plants. Why? Why? Because in most of these places where these pitcher plants are seen in the places where there are rains are less, humid places. Okay, there. And where does mosquito lay their eggs? Stagnant water, and these things provide a lot of stagnant water. Okay, so they grow inside that. They won't eat. But then what is the use for pitcher plant? When some of these mosquitoes die for whatever reason, they actually absorb. So in this way, there is a absorption also. So co-evolution, the species has changed something so that it won't affect mosquitoes. The plant which is supposed to eat insects is actually not eating a insect. It's completely off, right? So that's what is co-evolution. I'll be talking about these things in one by one. Let's come back to our Amazon. Amazon, as I mentioned, the dust. You are very, very like, you don't think that dust is good. Whenever you go behind a bus in a two-wheeler, you will be cursing. Why he has to actually throw so much dust at my face? But the same dust, which is actually airborne, crosses across the Atlantic Ocean and comes and falls on Amazon forest, is responsible for the survival of Amazon forest. How? Phosphorus. Okay. So what happens is, phosphorus is a very, very important and essential macronutrient for the plant, all aspects of plant growth, starting from energy transfer, photosynthesis. Yesterday, madam talked about phosphates in DNA and RNA. For all these things, it depends on phosphorus. It actually helps in root development, flowering, fruiting, and overall vigor. What else is there in a plant's life other than this? So that means that phosphorus is essential. Unfortunately, the Amazon is called as rainforest because that means there is a lot of rain. This rain takes away all the phosphorus in the land. So it will be lacking phosphorus. And if without phosphorus, it cannot do any of these things. Another thing, have you heard of this rain seeding? Recently in Delhi or someplace, they took a plane and tried to make rain by artificial rain. How do they do? By not dry ice, usually silver ions. Okay, so whatever that is doing, the same thing is this dust is doing. Dust is actually acting as a point where the water can condense around, and then it can actually create rains. So in both the ways, the dust is responsible for the growth or sustenance of Amazon forest. Okay. So how trade winds carry, the trade winds is similar to our monsoon. Trade winds carry 20 to 25 million tons of dust every year, and there is a particular time also. So you may think that, okay, this may be just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with what exactly happened. But you know the funny thing? How many of you are 10th standard or 10th standard biology have you completed? So there is a photosynthesis chapter, right? There you might have read about stomata opening, guard cells, and all sort of things. So what is the one which is responsible for that? Potassium ion, K plus. You remember that? That potassium ion, whatever the way this potassium ion actually depends on this one. Sorry, calcium K. Potassium ion depends on phosphorus for its working. Whenever potassium ion enters into a guard cell and when it actually goes opens, then only it will allow light and other things to come. To avoid water escaping, it closes when the potassium ion goes out. Right? You have read that. You might have even written an exam on that. That is controlled by phosphorus. This same potassium ion actually creates a soup kind of situation where phosphorus, which is insoluble in normal water, will be soluble in this malate. Malate is a system, malate K plus, where the tree actually prepares for getting the phosphorus. by actually preparing the malate, which will convert into soluble potassium and the phosphorus. I keep this forgetting. Phosphorus to absorb that and taken to the different parts of this one. So it's not that tree will simply absorb whenever it falls on that. It prepares for that every year. So that is the one of the things which is available. How do we know? How this is our story, very beautiful story. But how do we prove that actually this sand or this dust is basically from Sahara only? That's where fingerprinting comes into picture. You calculate the ratio of strontium 87 to strontium 86. You heard about these isotopes and others. If you take the ratio and compare that ratio with the Amazon forest land, and from the Sahara, it matches mostly with Saharan dust, not with sand from or matter from Amazon. That clearly shows that this dust is basically from there. So NASA has actually calculated this path and they have actually identified this using their missions. You can clearly see how it is actually traveling from there to here. They have followed it up. Fine. What happens if it's not there? So the first thing is in 2018, so this dust level has reduced by 18%. So earlier it used to come as 20 million ton. So 18% less is almost like 16 million ton. So what happened? Well, more than 20% of new seeds which were growing, new plants which were coming up, it has reduced by 20%. Not only that, even the cod fish which was available in this one, that number also went down. So like this, so many effects happened just because dust fell. In 2026, it is expected the dust to be fall by 25%, and it is going to be a catastrophic effect for this one. And rain also reduces because there is now less places where the condensation can happen. Rain fell by 15 to 20%. I don't know the number, but it fell by a significant number just because of dust. And I didn't mention this in my astronomy talks. In the entire universe, we talk only about dust. So when I say dust, it's not the whatever the dust you get when you go on a two-wheeler. Anything bigger than, larger than hydrogen and helium, we call it as dust. But here it is real dust. Okay. So this is okay. So the Amazon forest is getting benefits from Sahara. What does Sahara gets? Sahara, because of the rains from Amazon forest, Sahara has reduced growing. If there is no Amazon, Sahara will be losing 5% of its sand coverage every year, and it would have become entire thing would have become desert now. So it has stopped, and also the top layer of this one is stopped because of rains from Amazon forest. Okay, and when this happens, they have even identified the times when it happens. In June, the temperature reaches almost up to 50 degrees centigrade. It will bake the top layer, followed by winds, and by the time it reaches, it will be August, September. The dust will reach there, and it repeats every year, and it's happening from thousands of years. I just want to make a comment here. Okay, so rains reduce, forest, desert, and other. So I just want to make a comment here that around 10,000 years back, Sahara was not a desert. Now I am going to astronomy. Sahara was not a desert. It was as green as Amazon. But a small change in the tilt of Earth actually increased the amount of light light falling on Sahara, and then it continued to be what we usually call it as chain events. Okay, all sort of things connected, and finally it ended up as a desert. So that clearly shows that it will be reversed maybe in another 10-20,000 years. It may again become a forest. So then comes both of them are lifeless. They could not actually communicate between them, but even then they are depending on the others for survival. Let's come to live moving animals. Okay, so this is a big story of two animals. One is a fish and another is a snake. So trevally is a fish which grows almost like a human length, 1.7 meters, and then it weighs around 50 kg, almost like a human. And this is the most venomous snake in the. It is 10 times more venomous than a cobra, sea snake. Okay, these two have developed a strategy where they can benefit each other in hunting. Okay, how does it do? The trevally goes to a place where the snakes are there. It actually does a particular movement of his head. Then trevally, the sea snake decides whether to follow it or not. Then it will follow that. It goes to a place where coral reefs will have lot of caves kind of structure, where this trevally 1.7 meters and big and everything cannot go inside. There it actually finds, go there. This enters there. As soon as the snake enters, trevally will be waiting outside at the mouth. So then as soon as it goes, the fish which are hiding there, they will get frightened. They will just rush out. As soon as they rush out, almost 70% of the fish which rushes out, trevally eats. And remaining whatever which goes back, the sea crate eats. So they don't fight for the share. Okay, both of them eats, so that it actually, when hunting so alone, they get almost 1/4 or 1/3 of the fish if they hunt together. Okay, see, the reason is this: if you come to the open sea, trevally is a very very fast swimmer. It swims so fast that nothing can escape that. But when in the caves and these kind of things, it cannot go and hunt the fish. And this is a slow swimmer. If the fish escapes to the open this one, it will not hunt. It cannot hunt. But together, they have become a fantastic partner. See how they are following this yellow trevally. All these yellow fish are trevally. See how they are snakes. All the snakes are following. It's not one or two. All the snakes. And then now it is actually showing. This is a different one. It is actually showing where it has to go. See, it's going inside. It's eating away. And whatever the fish which comes out of the cave, how does it catch? Trevally don't try to bite it. It opens its mouth so wide, then it almost acts like a vacuum. It sucks it. Okay. These are the pictures how it is showing in the infographics. How the sea snake enters inside. How it shows. Then the only light is here. So then when all these things goes out, this catches. Okay, same way. You know the funny thing? It's not very random. Each trevally knows its snake. It goes back again and again to the same snake. If by chance the fish or the snake is dead, to actually develop again a partnership, it takes lot of time. It does lot of trial and error and again finds a partner. It's not just random that you simply go there, call an auto, and any auto fellow who is there, he'll come. It's not like that. They look for a particular snake and the snake prefer particular trevally. Okay, so without any knowledge. So this is another one, something similar to the same one, but here it is slightly above trevally and snake. This is a grouper fish, again a big fish, and then that is called as eel, moray eel. Okay, so I'll show the pictures of this later on, then you will see how not ugly looking, how horrible looking it is. Okay, now this is something similar to that, something similar to coral reef and everything. This is a very very fast swimmer. The fish, the moray is very very powerful. They can enter into the places where fish cannot enter. So these are just going for a hunt together, and it is actually asking it, are you interested in coming? So then they start going together. See, both of them are started going. Okay, then when it comes there, it actually shows head points. See here. and then that will enter that. Okay, so then the same thing, it goes inside, it comes, it will be waiting outside, and then it will eat. One funny thing about here is not every moray eel it will prefer. Whatever it prefer, it looks for not the younger one or experienced one only. And then if the moray eel is sick, it will not go with that. And then even if that one is a inexperienced one, the moray eel will not follow the fish. Okay, they have almost like 6 words vocabulary. The first one, to call it, it will say that come. Then it will answer whether to follow it or not. The second thing, it will take and show a particular cave, saying that you enter that cave. So you might have seen in the cartoon movies, na, many times when the people go for hunting with a dog, suddenly they show dog will stand like this. Exactly the same thing the fish does. It will stand still without moving. Then once it enters, it will wait outside. So in that way, they'll catch. See the way it catches the fish. See how it has opened its mouth and it's sucked in. So that's how it catches, and it catches very fast. I'm sorry, I used this for more snake, but this is where it happens. So this is between Trevor and Secret. When they hunt together, the yield will be almost 5 times more. Earlier, if the fish what they could catch at each hunt is 10 kgs, together they can catch 50 kgs. Not only that, they can catch bigger fish, so that you don't have to hunt many times. So instead of catching 10 kg fish for 4 times, they can catch 1 or 2 20 kg fish. So they can actually spend more time on reproduction and other areas. So in both the ways, both of them are very, very helpful. Okay, they are helping each other. What happens if these two fishes are not there? Moray eel and this one is gone. If both moray eel and not only moray and this one, another one trevally, if they're not there, that time the fish will start growing very, very. Other fish number will grow very fast because there is no control. So then they will start eating the algae on the coral reefs. Once this algae is removed, then the coral reefs will start dying because of bleaching. Okay, so people have seen that when for a particular experiment they have removed this pair completely from a coral reef, and they found that in 2014 it was very healthy. Within few months, for 3 months, it started dying. By August, it's completely dead. Entire coral reef was completely dead just because you removed these partnerships. Okay, so we have to, and these are other examples how they have dead within short time. So they are not only hunting, they are actually helping the coral reef to survive. So after the fish, let's come to a collaboration where we are talking about something from water and something from air. So dolphin is very, very fast swimmer, and during by clicking, it can actually get the rivers, like in bats, how the bats find other things. This is called as echolocation. It makes sound. After getting the reflection, it identifies where the prey is. Prey is not a small prey. It's a group of fish called bait ball. Okay, so they identify that. But if the fish is very close to the surface, it cannot do that because the reflection will not be there. So whenever the fish see dolphins or shark or something similar, they hide not in somewhere, they go to the surface. So dolphins cannot see them. There comes the bird, the fish, tern, or some other birds. They will be flying at very high, this one. They can see the fish forming at the top surface up to 2 kilometers. So they can identify that. So once they identify that, they'll start doing particular kinds of flying. It will try to come close to water, goes back. Close to water, goes back. The dolphins, they respond to that by raising their head above water and saying like this. So then both of them will come near the bait ball. I'll show the picture of bait ball. This is the bait ball. Individual one is a fish, sardine fish. Okay, so these are called as super pods. Thousands of dolphins will be together. What they do is they will surround it completely from everywhere. They will surround so that they cannot escape this way or that way. Once they surround, this will be very like they will be frightened. They will form groups. This almost looks like a big fish, na? Because you can't make out individual fish. For other bigger fish, they will run away when they see this bait ball because it looks like a single animal. But for dolphins, they will simply cover that. By clicking, they make it more tighter and tighter. And top turns will start this one. At one particular point, people have not identified what is the signal is. They will start jumping jumping into the water from the top. This will make sound. That's it. All the fish will be go to the surface. And for this, it takes only 0.3 seconds. Whatever the eye we blink na, if the order of that time, both of them actually match the timings and they will attack from both the sides. Okay, so the fish will have no place to run away and they will be eaten. See, they started jumping. These people are covering that. Both of them feasting. The birds cannot go below more than 1 meter. So they will attack only the top layer. Whereas these can go from the top. See the way it jumps, goes. Even many fishermen in Kerala and Karnataka and other places, they follow these turns. Whenever they turn start doing this signal of just coming to the water and going up and other things, then they will know that there is fish and they'll go and they'll throw their this one nets and catch them. Okay, so this is one thing. Then comes cleaner wrasse. There is a fish called cleaner wrasse. Have you seen the movie Shark Tale? Will Smith. There is a cartoon movie called Shark Tale. So this is the story of that. So what happens? A fish, okay, it will have lot of problems. It will have flukes. It will have some body wounds and others. It will be infected. So lot of things will be happening. So this fish will maintain a cleaning station at a reef. There, all these fish come there. They wait in a queue. Okay, and you know the funniest thing, outside where this moray will be to eat another fish, here in the cleaning station, no fish will attack another fish. They'll simply wait there. It is a neutral territory. Okay, and then here also there is a hierarchy. Whoever may be getting serviced, if a bigger fish like shark or ray fish comes, these people will leave this and go and attend shark and come back. Okay, and also there are different levels. Shark will get 15 minutes service. These small fish will get 1 or 2 minutes. So funniest thing is, even the most vulnerable part of a fish, that is their gills, they will open and keep it ready. Even the shark will not swim away. It will keep its mouth open and wait for it to clean and go, the fish. So not only this wrasse fish, there are shrimp also which will do the same thing. So see here, even the smaller fish are getting cleaned. So what is the benefit of that? The benefit is whatever the irritant or the disease causing things will be eaten away by these fish, and these fish will get their food. You know, not only that hierarchy, there is one more thing is there, cheating. If by chance a cleaning fish cheats, means if it eats instead of the dead cell or the something, it will try to eat mucus, which is very, very tasty, and this one, sometimes it might eat that mucus. So if that happens, two things can happen. The fish try to swim away, then the small fish go to that and start just petting that. After some time, it will come back. Otherwise, once it leaves, it will never come back to that place. And if other fish see this, they will also leave. If there is one cheating incident and other fish see, 35% of the client are lost. Even they maintain all these things. Okay, even the biggest fish, they do that. See, even their eye and everything, they eat, clean the eye and everything. This is a gill. You can see it will glow there and clean that. Okay, so the question now, one fish always survives by eating another fish, right? So now in front of shark, these rods are very, very thin or very, very small. Then how come they're not eating that? Two things. One is this color. See this shark, in the shark mouth, this is nothing. All it has to do is close the mouth and it get breakfast, snacks. But it won't do that. The reason is this is not a rasa fish, this is a goby fish. You see something special in both of them. You remember, if you see this blue strip running across the entire body, it seems that when this particular color is there, that fish won't eat that small fish. And another thing is this jumping, dancing of like up and down. So as soon as it does that, almost 90% of savageness goes down. It becomes very, very like certain. It won't even try to move its body. So this dance is another thing. How many of you watched the movie Zootopia? Zootopia, where the savage is turned to savage, na? So this is the treatment where that savageness is reduced. Okay, in real life. So people did experiment by removing the cleaner rash from one complete thing, and immediately the diseases started spreading, and many fish varieties were completely gone from that place, particular place. Okay, so this is how these two work together. Finding Nemo. How many of you seen Finding Nemo? So there is a sea turtle which will actually take the Nemo's this one and cross oceans, right? That's not a story. That's actually a real thing. Turtles actually support more than 30 varieties of fish, and it is mutual benefit. Have you heard of barnacles? Barnacles is something completely covered with shells, and they will be sticking onto the body. And even ship and others will have barnacles. They actually clean it up because two things happens. One, because of these barnacles, the friction increases, the speed reduces, and also barnacles will be so heavy that the animals and the ship, even the ship has to spend more fuel. Okay, so these four actually helps them in reducing not only barnacles, many other things. This is called as remora fish. This is a very, very particularly important thing because it will be simply stuck on the shell without doing anything. With this, it will get thousands of kilometers it can travel without spending any energy at all, just because it is sticking to sun. And then these are called as surgeon fish. They clean entire body. Okay, they remove all the parasites, flukes, and everything from their body, makes it clean, and helps in reducing the wounds. Then these are called same. We just talked about trevally and even other jock kind of fish. What they do is like they will be surrounding like a security. They will be going in front of that security. Even the very big animals like sharks and others won't attack the turtle because they will be in so many numbers. And then this is called as pilot fish. They will be simply going along with them. They will actually support it in moving. Okay, what they get in return, whenever this body, some 50 to 100 kg weight is moving, lot of food items will be coming up. These fishes use that, and then whatever it eats and leftovers will be eaten by these other fish. So in this way, they will be helping each other as a collaboration. Okay, I should have put the barnacles later, maybe next one. So this is a remora, that sucker. It simply attaches to the body, doing nothing. And the funny thing is, in an instant, it can remove that and you're free. It not only attaches to sea turtle, it attaches to sharks and everywhere. It will be simply attaching and going around. And the people are trying to find out the way it works so that in medical field, it will be very, very useful. Okay, So what are the major problems faced by all these three sets of collaboration in sea is mainly what we call it as ghost nets. People use it for fishing. After sometimes they whatever the torn and other things they'll simply leave. You know, snake, it won't actually live in water. It is a breathe. To breathe, it has to come to the air. Maybe for after 1.5 hours, but it has to come out. But if it gets stuck in this nets, they will simply drown. After 2 years or 2 hours, they will die. Even the snakes will die. Similarly, all these animals also, even the turtle, it has to come to the surface to breathe. Okay, so these all these things, most of the 50, more than 50% of these snakes and the turtles, everything die because of this leftover nets called ghost nets. Okay, see, this is the worst example. You can see how many of them are caught in that. Not only this, plastic and all sort of things are actually destroying that. Then the whatever the signals it gives, it needs very very quiet atmosphere. If there's a motorboat coming there, the travelee cannot even understand whether a snake is ready to come or not. Moray eel will not even respond because it won't even see whether it's moving its body or just standing there. So because of this, these are all are learned that experience is getting lost. Once this experience is lost, they cannot form pairs again. So because of all these things, we are losing a lot of these animals with time. So this is a very, very funny and peculiar collaboration, whatever I have come across. This is between one fish and one shrimp. This shrimp almost do not have any sight at all. It cannot see. And goby, it has a very good sight, but it cannot make burrows. So if it is in open, it cannot survive more than few tens of minutes. Within an hour, something other will eat it away. So it has to hide. But it don't know how to actually make the burrow. This one knows how to make the burrow, but it cannot see. Eyes are there, but it cannot see. So they have actually made a partnership such that it will, when it is making a burrow, it will not only make a burrow for its own, it will make for two people, including him. So that is, it is renting it out. What it gets in return? You see this long antennae? With this antennae, it will always be in touch with the goby fish. So it will actually tell it how to survive. It suddenly makes a movement of its tail fin and it guesses that through this, and immediately both of them runs inside. Even the way it has made the burrow is such that while going back, two can easily go inside and turn around, and they even have a separate room for storing their food for both. Okay, and all these things is done by this shrimp. Just to give an example, if the shrimp was of human size, like my size, the amount of sand it throws out in 1 year will be equal to 60,000 Maruti cars. That is the kind of sand it will be throwing out regularly. Because sea water means whenever there is a water flow, it will be again filled with sand. So it has to continuously keeping. So what it is doing, this is getting free rent. In response, it is giving protection to that. So without both of them will not survive. This cannot survive because it don't have eye and it cannot catch fish or it cannot find any prey. This in open cannot survive for more than an hour. So they are surviving. This fish is called as pistol fish. Shrimp. Pistol shrimp. What is pistol? See the way it is working. I think you can even see. See, so many of them are there. See this antennae. It will always be touching that. And see how it is actually always touching. So this is what pistol means. This claw, shrimp's claw, is so powerful. You can say that in the whole universe, it's very, very powerful claw. It moves its claw at 100 kilometers per hour, so fast that the air there, water there will not get time to escape. So because it moves so fast, there is an adiabatic expansion. So adiabatic expansion is nothing but bubbles forming, cavitation. These bubbles will actually move out when they burst. Actually, they'll create a shock. So here is the shock picture, and this shock can create 5,000 degrees centigrade temperature. I was talking about this on sun. Sun's surface is 5,000 degrees centigrade. This can create that kind of thing just by clicking the claw. Hence, it's called pistol. Because this creates a shock, it can come and hit any animal, and that animal will become motionless, and that's how it hunts. I'm not talking about big animals, smaller animals, where it can actually, instead of using venom like snakes do, it uses a shock to make it unmovable and eats that. So next come to completely on ground. This you have seen, almost everybody who has gone into gardens has seen this. In the gardens, you can see that below any of these your plants, there will be white color small insects moving around. These are called aphids. Okay. So I'm talking about two relations between ants and a plant, aphids and the tree. So these are called as aphids. Okay. So these, when they actually touch it like this, they secrete some sweet liquid. We call it as honeydew. Okay. So just for this, ants take them and keep it on a tree, and they will keep on protecting them. They will serve them and everything. When some of them become sick, they'll move it away or eat them away. And whenever the temperature is very high, like if the temperature is high or it becomes very cold, they move this thing to some other place, wait there. Once the weather becomes normal, they bring it back. So in this way, they are actually doing dairy farming. Like what we do for milk, they are doing for honeydew. Okay, and then it actually protects from which different insects which eats these aphids, like lacewing, one lacewing or some other thing also. Okay, many of them they save from them. So they give security. In turn, they get sweet residue out of that. It's not only that, these aphids can actually grow wings and fly away. But these plants secrete a particular kind of chemical which suppresses growing of these wings so that they cannot escape away. They will not allow them to escape. So it is like herding. They keep in a different particular place. They will not allow them to escape. They utilize that. Instead, they actually take care of them. So then comes acacia. You have seen this acacia. In Kannada, we call it as jali. What do you call in your language? Jali. Fine. So you can see that in almost all the roadsides, some places it even makes a small round one like a tamarind kind of fruits also. Okay. You see these thorns. Why are the thorns are there? Thorns are not for protection. They are not very strong. They are not very like sharp. They are actually dull. You can see that it is not very sharp, and it is hollow also. The only reason the trees makes these thorns is for the ants to make a home out in that. So they will actually keep their small eggs and everything inside here, not for safety of the plant. Same thing, even they produce. See here how easy, how they have actually produced that to make sure that ants stay there. Okay. So when an animal tries to eat the plant, immediately these ants will come out of that. They'll start attacking the animal. And see, this is making that whatever it's moving its back now, that is actually spraying pheromones so that it is calling all the plant, all the other ants. Within fraction of second, all the ants will come out. You can see if you touch something, it hardly takes some time to move everything on your hand. So they will attack. They not only bite inside the nose, they actually throw a formic acid. It won't kill the animal, but it is very, very irritating. So the animal, like a giraffe or elephant, will decide not to eat that, because why to take a chance? Why to get irritation when we have other trees there? So it will leave the tree. It will go to some other tree. All this happens within fraction of a second. Few seconds, it will simply run away. Even the animal like giraffe or elephant. So in that way, it saves them. Okay. So this is an example of coevolution. Even though the plant has no use for these thorns, it has actually started growing thorns just for the ants. And also it has food packets. Okay, here are these food packets are of no use to the plant. It is only for the ants. So like this, both of them are co-evolved to make sure that this partnership sustains. So finally, I'm coming to our own people, humans. So this coevolution and all this mutualism is not only in the animals, even between animal and humans and animals. This is a story of Yavo hunters in Mozambique. So these Yavo hunters, they depend on honey. But most of the times what happens is these honey bees will build their this nest inside deep burrows and other places. It will be very tough to find out. But there is a bird called honey guide bird, red-billed honey guide bird. So this knows where these things are. So they actually will be in a plant. This man goes there, makes a sound like brrrma, brrrma. Then if the bird knows a place where the honey is there, it will come towards him, start chirping, and goes little further away in the direction of the honey and stays for him to follow. So then once the person reaches there, it will again fly from there, goes little more, waits again. So in that way, it will bring him to the place or the tree where the honey is. And then it will make some chirp sound, goes and sits on the one of the branches. So then this person goes, removes that honey, takes the honey and leaves out wax, bee wax, and the larvae for the bird. You know the funny thing? This is only one of the very few birds which can actually digest bee wax, almost like plastic. Okay, so this is deliberate. The bird is not trained for this. It has learnt this, how to follow. When once it is the bird is moving, and if the person loses his way and moves away, then it goes back again, circles, makes sound again, and make sure that he directs it again. And then after some times, if it knows that okay, the person is not properly following, it simply flies off. And then after 1 or 2 hunts, if it is not getting enough bee wax, it will not go for hunt. It will take its own decision whether to go for hunt or not. So mainly it happens invitation. The man will make a sound, and Yavo man makes this brrrum. Other makes different kinds of sounds. And experimentally, it was shown that these birds respond to only those calls, not other horn or anything. It won't respond. Only those birds. In the villages, you may know. In my home, my uncle have this ploughing and others. Whenever he calls, he simply makes. Immediately, the cattle will go and stand next to the ploughing thing. So you don't even have to pull that and stand that. It will stand there. And I have even seen some of the well-trained ones. They even put on that front, this one noga, what we call, on their own back. They pushing themselves. All you have to give is make a signal. And then you can even make them stop and everything using those sounds only. But They're trained. Here the bird is not at all trained. So that journey, location, and the sharing, this is how it is eating. Okay. If you stop giving this enough, it will stop responding. So now the question is it a choice or is it slavery? This is happening from almost few thousand years. This is a 4,000-year old rock painting in Mozambique. You can clearly see how a honey hunter is actually taking the honey out. Can you see a bird here? Can you see the honey guide bird there? Now can you see? Because it's a rock paint, it has gone bad, but you can clearly see there is a honey bird sitting here. So this is goes back to 4,000 years, and that should have been happening much before that. Now the problem is because of civilization, these people are not depending on honey in the wild. They're growing honey, so they're losing that out. Because they're losing that out, the birds are also forgetting how to respond and how to guide. Okay, now people are actually reintroducing them in Mozambique. The people who are experiencing this, and they're training, and training in the sense they're calling and the guide is doing. This is very common everywhere. Instead of rhino, you might have seen a ox, cattle sitting on that with a heron and cattle heron. So many things are. One thing I want to say is why it is so important. See, these are called as red-billed oxpecker. Okay, so even though it's very very strong, rhino is very very strong and everything, its a sense of smell is very good, etc. It has a very poor eyesight. Anything more than 20 feet, so 20 meters, a tank or a car, a human being, it doesn't make any difference for that. It cannot actually identify. Okay, so but the bird can see a very very long distance, almost 200 to 300 meters. I'll come to that importance of that later on. Before that, what these things do is these have our comb kind of bill. Okay, it actually takes out all the ticks and eats them from these folded skin. In this way, you can imagine per day it can remove almost 500 to 600 ticks. So these ticks are nothing but the ones which actually drink blood, sucks blood. If you leave like that without actually removing them, after some time the animal will lose lot of blood and become anemic and become very very weak, right? This is helping them in avoiding that. Okay, so and then this is a major thing. It uses 4 ways of alerting the rhino when something is coming. If it is making simply a single chirp, then it says that somebody is coming, be alert. Okay, then when it starts making sound again and again like that, then you say that, okay, threat, I'm sure whatever is coming is dangerous to you, be very careful. It's like yellow alert. Then continuously started doing, then that means that it is very very close, red alert. You have to be extremely careful. When that happens, see, first time when it gives a single sharp, it will simply raises its head, looks around and starts grazing. Then the next time when it starts, it stops, it turns towards where the bird is saying and start looking at seriously. When this happens, without even thinking anything, either runs towards the threat or runs away from the threat. It won't even think something is happening. The fourth one, red alert, if it, in addition to making the sound, if suddenly flies off, immediately it's extreme danger within meters. This will give maximum response. Aankh band karke, it just hits. Okay, this is everything because it can actually see this only at this level because within 20 meters. Nothing else can actually give alert to that. So it depends on the bird for all of these. Now, is it useful or not? These birds not only eats ticks and other things. In addition to that, whatever the wound is there, it likes to drink blood. It keeps the wound open for more time. On an average, the wound will take 30 to 40% more time to heal without a bird like this. So the question now is this bird is useful or not? Useful or not? Useful, but it is drinking blood. So in 100 years back, in 1900, there were more than 5 lakh rhinos in India. Sorry, whole world. Now in 1970, that has fallen to 70,000. Currently, we have around 27,000 rhinos in the whole of world. You can see that it's almost like 90%, 95% animals, rhinos are dead. But 90%. Okay. It is found that with oxpecker, 1 in 5 rhinos are saved from the poachers. That is 20% increase. So 20% rhinos are saved only because there are birds. So then giving out blood is a very small payment, right? So it's always useful. When you are comparing 90% is loss, saving 20% is much better than losing them. So 1 in 5. Now, after going through all these things, what are these things teaching us? One, specialization. Each partner brings a unique skill the other lacks. The best example is dog and human. So dog will have so keen sense of smell and speed and other agility. So it can be a very good security, or for hunting also it's very useful. Co-evolution. Millions of years have shaped these bodies and behaviors. Gut bacteria is the best example in humans, where the bacteria is beneficial in breaking or helping in digestion, whereas it itself gets the food. So ecosystem health, if you remove one partner, the whole system can collapse. So using this, your mouthwash, is it good or bad now? Using mouthwash is good or bad? Bad, right? Because you are actually not only removing the bad bacteria, you are removing the good bacteria also from your tongue. Okay, so if you remove one partner, the whole system may collapse. Then trust and signals. So you have to have your own way of communicating with the others. It need not be English or Sanskrit. You have to develop your own way of communicating. Then it is always better together instead of fighting alone, whereas you will be losing on most of the times. Better to fight together and live longer, survive. Finally, nature perfected collaboration much before humans did. Much before humans started dairy, humans started agriculture. Nature was already doing that at a different scale. Okay, all these this one are there. So why these are under threat? Mainly climate change. Then overfishing is removing the ones which are useful also. Invasive species. When I talked about acacia, even though I showed only one ant variety, there are totally 4 ant varieties which are useful in different ways. And there is a 5th variety which will invade everything without actually providing any benefit at all. I didn't show that there. So it will be simply there. It will not provide any benefit. Even if an animal comes to eat the plant, it will not do anything. So the animals will learn that even the ants are there, it is not going to be harmful harmful to us, and they'll continuing eating that. So they are also having invasive species. Because these are invasive, these will drive away all the useful ants also from that place. The tree is dying because these are driving away them. Then habitat loss is, we are very much know about this pollution, pesticides, plastics and everything. Pesticides, what is happening is, in the Mozambique and many places, these ox, instead of actually cleaning by manually, they are dipping them in chemicals. So once they dip in the chemicals, all the ticks are gone. And whatever the oxpecker eats that, then they will also die. So in that way, entire oxpecker species is going away. Then urbanization, human expansion, fragments and isolates worlds. So we are losing a lot of things. So we have time to actually change that. Fight the climate change. I'm preaching it. Sorry for this slide. Protect habitats. Make sure that marine reserves and national parks survive. Reduce pollution. Use as less plastic as possible. Avoid pesticides and waste. You have to do responsibly dispose. Educate others about how to save and how these things are useful for us and others. And I'll not worry about vote and advocate. Grow native plants. Don't bring something from outside which we cannot survive. To support that to them to survive, you have to use lot of pesticides and others. Okay. So with this, what it is saying is, latest lesson is, in a world of fierce competition, I was telling somebody, don't have to be competition all the time. The most successful strategy is always cooperation. So we would like to be partner with NASA than make sure that we go beyond them. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is a Hindu's philosophy. So we treat everybody as partner of this one. And the same way, Africa has something called Ubuntu. One for all for all. One. Okay. So both of them teach us the same thing. So the question is, the honey guide in the forest is calling. Are we listening? Are we ready to listen? Okay. Thank you very much. If there are questions.
Anyone has got any question? Please raise your hand.
Study and observe them.
This I'll give you two examples. That honey guide calling and honey guide this one. It went almost for 3 to 4 years. Okay, and then Trevally they spent 5 years to find out, because you are starting with no knowledge. You won't expect them to do that. You actually identify that only after seeing that, so that you will not know when to watch, when not to watch, when to be away, when to be close by. Because when you're close by, they may not even do that, right? So it takes long time. Certain times, in sometimes it is luck. They might have doing something, watching something else, they would have seen this and identified this. So you can't put a proper time on that. On an average, few years.
So, sir, can we say that even though species have different languages or ways of communicating with each other, after living in the ecosystem for such a long time, they have found a way to communicate with other species based on just behavior or environmental factors?
Right. See, for example, particularly that honey guy in the honey, it is learnt one. They will be seeing their parents doing that and their parents doing that. It is learnt and it is passed on from generation to generation. Even the sound made by the humans has to be specific. As I said, other sounds it won't respond. So if I go there today, I will not know how to make that sound. They will not respond. So by losing any one of them, we will lose that experience. And then coming to that moray eel and groper. So one of them, if they die, it will take a lot of time to actually make another partnership. It will do a lot of experiments before identifying one. If that means that if you start removing this grouper by fishing and others, so the entire thing might be lost.
And even graver consequences for the other factors associated with it.
Most of the times, the entire ecosystem will go off.
Thank you, sir.
Rhinos, what is happening is, rhinos actually keeps many form of grass by overgrowing, and many other animals depends on that. It's in nature. It's not just one animal depending on one. So in the end, you please remind me. I'll give the perfect answer for this. How everything is correlated.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Next, anyone has got any questions?
Sir, as you told, that the rate of transfer of sand from the Sahara desert is decreasing. Why it is decreasing?
Many reasons. It might be El Nino effect, because when it was supposed to be baked and dust is created at the time, if there is rain, then it will not happen. Okay, it needs certain temperature to break these things, stone to make it dust. That may not have happened at this year. Even the so instead of 3 months sun, it might have happened that only 2.5 months sun was there. Remaining time it was cloudy. So lot of factors they may affect that. Even the rains, whatever the Amazon rains, instead of stopping at a particular time, if it had continued for 1 more month, it would have made it more moist and it will take more time. So you cannot actually pinpoint one reason, but there can be many, many reasons.
Sir, can this same phenomena can happen in India, like from the Thar?
Okay, thank you very much for asking that. All these things have a collaboratory in India. For example, in my, okay, I have written a book on that. I didn't talk all these things. Each and every one of them, I have given a equivalent thing in Karnataka, particularly Karnataka only, not even in India. I have chosen Karnataka. For example, instead of dust, Arabian salt from Arabian Sea is actually used for many Sahyadri forests. So there are equivalents in Karnataka and India also, but may not be at that scale or may not be at a different way. But it is always there. The example that dolphin and tern happens in Kerala. It is very close to us. And in Bandipur forest, you have this gaur. Gaur is the second largest animal in the vegetarian animal. That is, it's a bullock. What do you call that? Gaur. Bison. It's a bison. It's full of only muscle. But their herons help them in surviving the other people. So like that, each one happens very close to us. And particularly acacia and aphids, you just go around in your garden, you will see all of them. Acacia is almost everywhere on the roadside you can see. So you can check that.
Sir, as you told about Chandrayaan 5,
Now, we are sticking to this talk only. That Chandrayaan 5 talk will be tomorrow. Question will be tomorrow, 2 hours.
Any more questions from students?
So I'm just curious that is there any case where fish having gills go to the surface for O2 respiration from terrestrial air?
Need not be completely, but there is a variety of fish called as flying fish. If you go to Andaman, if you are in the sea, you can see that they can actually fly for hundreds of meters. During that time, it is assumed that it depends on the
But
oxygen.
why? Why?
Why, I don't know. I am not a biologist. I am a physicist. After it dies, I will know. By that time, oxygen is not required. I'm sorry. I
Okay,
don't
sir.
know the answer.
Good evening, sir. Do you think at any course of time, both the Sahara Desert and the Amazon will be filled with greenery?
It might be. It might have been. But Amazon might not be like a rainforest like this. It might be smaller shrubs and others. Other might be like a rainforest. It might be. I don't know. Chances
sir.
are very high. All it requires is 50% less rain in Amazon to maintain the phosphorus available there.
Sir, as you have explained that there is a relationship between Amazon forest and Sahara desert, which are two abiotic factors. Sir, is there any same type of relationship between an abiotic and biotic factor? As
You mean
there
to say that lifeless and life?
means the influence of Sahara desert is there in any other part of which influence the organism of
That's
other
just
part?
now I told him that the salt from Arabian Sea is useful to maintain Sahyadris forest. So that can be another example. Sahara dust. She's saying that Sahara dust is they get it in Mumbai also. March April time.
Thank you, sir.
I was not aware of that. Thank you. I'll just add.
Anyone else? Any more questions, student? Okay, I don't think.
Okay. Thank you very much. I
Thank
just
you
wanted-
very much, sir. Please give a big round of applause, sir, once again.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to answer her question at the end. I just kept it at the end. So, how many of you have eaten honey? Okay. How many of you know the importance of bees? Importance of bees. Bees which actually makes this honey. Okay, let me ask the question in a other way. Assume that all the bees are dead today. What will happen? What will happen? Assume that there are no more bees from today, 11th April 2026. What will happen? You know, we will not survive more than 2 years. Humans will perish if there are no bees for 2 years. Because as you yourself mentioned, most of the pollination depends on bees. Once you start losing the bees, the pollination will reduce. You can do manual pollination, but that will not be that cost efficient. So you will be spending multiple times, like 10 to 100 times more money on that. That means that automatically the whole overall things will reduce. There will be famine everywhere. Few maximum dozen years for us. None of us will survive beyond dozen years. And everything just because of small bee. Right? So this is a general knowledge question. If you actually can weigh what is the biomass, means what animal will weigh the maximum on earth? Biomass, overall, total. Answer question. Did you understand my question? Ants. You? Plants. Anything else? Anything else? Actually, ants, as I said, weighs almost 1/3, very close to 1/3 of the total biomass on Earth. Ants weighs almost 1/3 the biomass on Earth. Maybe I'm off by 1/4, but it is very, very significant. Okay, finally, my really last question. What is the most valuable thing on Earth? Not bees. Forget about bees. Let me say mineral. Let me say something non-living. Something non-living. I know you will say bees and then ants. Not oxygen. Anything else? Nobody is saying gold, diamond. Huh? Gold is also available in nature only. No. Okay. I agree. Whatever the answers you are agreeing saying. Let me actually expand the search. Entire universe. What is the most less available living or non-living thing? Whole universe. You know the answer? Plants or wood? Wood. Wood is the most valuable item in the entire universe, because I just made a comment that the one asteroid which is coming is completely made of diamond. So if we can pull that, is it psych or something? Some other number with number is there, na? So if we can pull that asteroid to Earth, each one of us, or every 10 billion people are there on Earth, na? 6. So all of us will get lot, like tons of diamond. That is the kind of diamond it is made out of, that asteroid. Like that, there are a lot of asteroids completely made up of gold, silver, and other elements. But till today, the only thing we have never seen anywhere outside is life. That is plants and wood. Okay. Thank you very much. Big favor.
Thank you very much once again, sir.
Hello.
Hello. So we'll take a 15 minutes tea break. After that, we'll reassemble here in this auditorium once again. And one more announcement is that the students who are coming from Bhubaneswar, you'll be moving for the bus because the bus is going to leave in few minutes. The Bhubaneswar students, you'll be moving towards the bus. Please raise your hand if you are a student coming from Bhubaneswar and go by the school bus. Yes, please move better. Anyone else?
Vinita Navalkar. She did her PhD on astroset X-ray mirrors. Dr. Girish mentioned it about how grazing incidence mirrors were made and a CCD camera was there in front. She was primarily involved in making the mirrors and the calibration of the CCD, etc. And she did her PhD on that. After that, she has gone into scientific publishing and managing scientific publishing. She also teaches astronomy laboratory, amateur astronomers, and a whole lot of astronomy work she does apart from her own professional life. And it's my pleasure to invite Vinita.
Thank you, sir. So before I start, how many of you have taken photos of anything in the sky? Oh, all of you. Wow, that's great. So I don't have to take this lecture. You know how to do photography. Okay. So what have you taken? Like, have you taken moon? Moon. Just sky, just constellations, right? It's not? Yes, that's the most important thing. The way we see things, cameras will see it differently. Okay, I don't know how you perceive it. Many a times I have faced that people come up with this idea of seeing Hubble images and then they don't see the same thing from telescope and they feel ये तो black and white दिख रहा है तो मुझे कुछ मजा नहीं आ रहा है. Okay, so obviously camera is going to give you much better colors and all, but with naked eye, if you see naked eye or telescope, of course it's going to be different. But at the same time, I would also tell you that there are a lot of events or a lot of objects which really look much better with naked eye than with any of the photographs. And one most important such event is total solar eclipse. You will never be able to match what a total solar eclipse looks to naked eye than in a photo. Photos are never good. You know, photos are never good when it comes to this. But anyway, so I'll be coming to how to photograph the sky. You know, you have attended all the lectures and you have seen that, you know, most of the data that we get now is definitely through taking photos at different wavelengths, at different you know, not exactly optical, but at different wavelengths, and we try to get out a lot of data from that. What I'm going to show you right now is, I'll show you some of the photos, of course, but I haven't really tried to get out any scientific data out of it. But what I would like to show you is, you know, how to take photos, how to choose cameras, and the entire procedure by taking photos at amateur level, not really at the you know, high-end telescopes. So this particular image that you see behind the text, that is Rosette Nebula. That particular image I had taken almost 6 years ago. So this is one of the image. Then what is this? Anyone? Milky Way. Exactly. Sagittarius arm of Milky Way. Now you'll be surprised. So generally, when we talk about observing the sky, we hate moon, right? Moon is the one that, if you really want to observe sky, you don't want moon to be around, because moonlight actually spoils the deep sky object and you don't get to see anything much. But now if I tell you this particular photograph I have taken on a full moon day, would you believe it? So yes, this particular photograph was actually taken on a full moon day in April 2015, where moon was on the western horizon and Milky Way was just rising. And so just look at the photograph. That's all I would like to say. Then I will go to the next photograph. This photograph has been taken on a clear dark night, no moon, close to new moon day. Can you see any difference between this and this photograph? One is bluish, one is reddish. So this red thing that we are actually getting is because of the full moon. Now that is actually the noise that I was not able to remove, because the stray light, the other light was a lot. But my point was, you can still take a photograph, you can still see this, but will you be able to just imagine, how many of you have seen Milky Way with naked eye? No one? Never? Only one. You have seen it. But no one? You don't want to get up early in the morning to see Milky Way. That is the problem, right? From India, you only get to see it in March, April, May, morning 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and no one wants to do that. Huh? So, see, Sagittarius arm is seen from India. Around it starts rising at around 5:30 in March. By the time in May, it rises around at 3 a.m. in the morning. Later, it's there throughout the night, but we have monsoons. So, anyways, after June, you can't see it. So, the best time to see is up to May, March to May. So, all these images that you're seeing are taken between 4:30 to 5:30 in the morning. So, March to April is what I've taken. So, maybe, yeah. So, point is, I could take this image in a full moon because it's an image. But if I really try to see this with naked eye on a full moon day, I will not be able to see anything of this. Absolutely. I will never see not a single fuzzy patch of any of the Milky Way. If you have not seen the Milky Way, you won't really understand what I'm trying to say. But when you actually see a Milky Way with naked eye, it appears like a cloud patch. It actually appears like a cloud patch. And sometimes if the sky is so clear and dark, then you can actually get confused between whether it is actually a Milky Way or a cloud. That has happened many times with me as well. Okay, so this is the second photo I already showed. Oh, this exposure time is 30 seconds for all. Yeah. ISO around 6400 or 1600, varying between that. So, this is the third one. Okay. Yeah. So, in fact, yeah. So, this is the third one. Okay. Another question to you before I go ahead. You like this photograph better or this photograph better? You like this one better. Why? Because there are trees. Okay. I go back again. This one is better or this one is better? Okay, now there are two. One of them you will like. Okay. Okay. So as far as, let me give you an answer. As far as, photograph is concerned, this is better. Because if you see all the stars, they are well focused. They are not blurred. If you go back, see this. These stars, oh, there is no, yeah. So if you just notice this portion, these stars are kind of bloated. They have become much bigger. If I go behind, see this, most of these stars, there are few big stars, of course, but most of these stars are much better focused than this particular photograph. It is the same patch of the sky, but it looks so different. Taken at different times, of course. It is not taken at the same time. Taken at different times, taken at different places. Okay. So just wanted to show you that, I have used the same equipment for both the photograph, same exposure settings, different times, agreed, but the photographs look different. Okay. Now, why does this happen? Because it also depends upon what type of instrument you choose, what parameters you choose, what are the weather conditions, and so on. Okay. So weather conditions is something, of course, we cannot control. So this particular image is actually out of focus, very frankly. It is not nicely focused. So that was the problem. Okay. But I've shown you 3 photographs of Milky Ways. Can anyone tell me how I've taken these photographs? Camera hai, obviously. But apart from that, how have I have taken these photographs? Okay. Okay. So you mean to say just holding the camera in my hand and taking photographs? Telescope ko lagaya? Okay. More answers? Tripod, fine. Yeah. That's a good answer. Anything else? Telescope ho gaya, tripod ho gaya, haath mein liya. Anything else? Only 3 options. Aur kya karenge? Okay. So, yes, just these 2 things. A camera and a tripod. No tracking mount, nothing. Okay. So, Milky Way, basically, I have taken these photos without a tracking mount, without anything. All these 3 photos have just been taken by these 2 things. But can I always use only this much to photograph all the objects? Yes, sir. Yeah, I was coming to that it is actually not correct. So, okay. So, I have only taken it with this. Now, can I take more images with just this equipment? If I want to take a particular planet or if I want to take a particular nebula, will it be enough? Milky Way to le liya maine, that is okay. But will it be enough just to use this? No. Obviously no, and there are multiple reasons for that. Okay, so let's try and understand those reasons now. Okay, so what are the basic requirements for to get good pictures? Obviously a camera, with or without a telescope. We just saw we can get good pictures without a telescope also. Mounts, this is very important, that where you mount your camera. Even if you're mounting on a telescope, or if you're not mounting on a telescope, it is very important what kind of mount you choose, and I will explain those things in detail. And generally when you go for sky photos, it is never a single shot. You can go for a single shot with large time of exposure, but generally most of the time, at least at the amateur levels, we go for multiple shots, stack them together to get one bright shot. So the three images that you actually saw, around 70-80 images have been taken and stacked together to get that. So it is never a single shot, it has been multiple images has been taken to get that. So for that, of course, you are not going to manually sit and see the number of stars that you had in that. So you cannot really manually stack each star one by one, map it and do that. So there are processing tools, you don't have to really do it manually. There are softwares which will help you to do that. So that is what I'll be covering today. So let's first start with what kind of cameras that you choose. The best ones, obviously, and been used in most of the research this Indias also, are the astronomical CCDs, but they are extremely expensive. Extremely expensive, and at amateur level, most probably you may not. None of us will be able to afford to buy them. So definitely, and of course, it's not only about being expensive. They are cumbersome. You need to cool them. You cannot really operate them well. I mean, they won't work that well in a hot, humid conditions. So you have to cool them. Another thing is most of these CCDs are operative using a laptop, or you require a computer. It's not something like our phones, or not something like a normal point and shoot or DSLR cameras where you just click. So you require a laptop or something to handle. So CCDs is but still a best option so far. Then come web cameras. So many people use web cameras for doing sky photography as well. You can connect a web camera to a telescope and you can actually get good images. But if you consider web cameras, generally their field of view, or the area that they capture in the sky, is very small. So generally web cameras are used more for planet photographs rather than Milky Way or other objects. Okay. But again, for web cameras you require computers. So what is the problem when I'm saying you require computers and all? So generally when you have to do these kind of photography, you are not really sitting in your lab or in a comfort zone. You have to travel to some remote places where there is less of electricity. The availability of all these things is limited. So you need to have a system where you do not require much of electricity or much other gadgets, and it can be like an independent system kind of a thing. Okay, other options which are cheaper and very nicely available and very easy to use are the normal point and shoot cameras. Okay, where the lens is fixed, and you just click. You must have seen those Canon power shots, or this tiny palm size cameras that they are readily available in the market and you can use them very easily. Lenses are fixed, they are retractable and everything. They are compact, everything is fine. But the problem is connecting those cameras to your telescope. So if you want to take just Milky Way kind of a photo where you actually do not need a telescope, you can still use them. But if you want to connect those cameras to a telescope, there is no way you can connect those cameras. There are no adapters as such that will help you to connect those cameras to a telescope. So they are also not that great when it comes to deep sky astrophotography. But of course, if you want to take a photo of an eclipse or just a sun, moon, something, then you can definitely use that because they have a better zoom as compared to DSLRs. So definitely you can use point and shoot cameras for these bigger objects. And the best ones, obviously, which are not so expensive, readily available, can be mounted on a telescope, and lots of tools are available to process these images of DSLR, the DSLR cameras, which most of the astrophotographers tend to use. Okay, so there are few things that maybe I'll discuss later in the session. That is bulb settings. So bulb settings is something that you can control how much time you can keep your shutter open, or you can keep your exposure, increase your time of exposure. So if you must have all done photography from what you say, pro mode photography from your mobiles, right? Most of the mobiles have this pro mode now, where you can actually select for how many seconds, you can expose your this. So generally, in most of the mobiles, you have a limitation of 30 seconds. If you have explored it, you will realize the maximum shutter speed that you can give or keep your exposure to up to 30 seconds. Beyond that, if you want to basically take image for more than 30 seconds, then your mobile phones are not really none of the mobiles have that option. DSLRs have this option, something known as bulb setting, where you actually manually keep your shutter. So shutter is basically what you click. So when you click that, if you keep that pressed, whether you do it manually or you do it with a remote or whichever way, so as long as you keep it pressed for whatever time duration, the exposure will be continuing. The image will be continued. So that manual settings can DSLRs, generally most of the DSLRs have that. So that's why they are preferable. So if I really want to take some image of some very faint object where I want to like expose that for say 1 minute, okay, 1 minute is a huge time when it comes to taking a photograph. Generally what we click is just not even 1 second. So when I'm talking about 1 minute, it's actually a huge time. You're keeping the shutter open for 1 entire minute. So those settings, if you want to do, then definitely DSLRs help you. Lenses can be removed. So there are a lot of factors which will help you to mount on a telescope. Another interesting thing is you get images in RAW. See, your mobiles or other point and shoot cameras generally process the image. The final output that you see are actually the processed versions. The softwares actually process and give you the final output. But you don't want that. Okay, when it comes to astrophotography, if you really want to pick out the tiny details, you don't want a preloaded software to process it. You want to process it yourself so that you will know what detail you want to get out from those images. So having a raw image, unprocessed image, is really very nice. Okay, so DSLRs can also provide you with that. Okay, so let's try and understand exactly how a camera works or what are the parameters that we need to choose. So first of all, what is a camera? Generally, what are the basic aspects of a camera? So one obviously is the lens. Okay, in the front there is a sensor at the back. So in front of the sensor you have the shutter. So this is the shutter that you control. Okay, you keep it on and off, and that tells you, like, for whatever duration you keep it on, opened basically, so light passes and goes on to the sensor, and the sensor basically integrates it. So sir was mentioning in the morning that our eye does not integrate for more than 1/20 seconds, but we have cameras where we can. So when I said about 1 minute and 30 seconds, it is basically that duration where you keep the shutter open and the light keeps falling onto your sensors. Okay, and then this is one shutter here. There is also something here which is known as aperture. Okay, so that also controls how much light actually reaches your sensor. So shutter will only control the time, for how much time your sensor will be exposed. But aperture is something that actually reduces the diameter from where the light enters to your sensor. So that is a very, very important aspect of one of the important parameter when you to choose when you have to take good photos. So quickly, let's try and understand what aperture is exactly. Okay, and how it is numbered basically. So if you see in any of your in fact, this particular things are there in your mobile cameras also. Aperture, uh, you can control your aperture in mobile cameras also, but of course you will not have this much of range. So generally, what exactly aperture is? So there are certain numbers. If you see, there are certain numbers. I'll explain what those numbers are. But these numbers actually help you to control what is the size of the hole that will allow light inside. So if it is f2, it's the biggest size hole that allows light inside. If it is f22, it is smallest. Okay, so this is how aperture controls the amount of light that reaches your sensor. And generally, this is actually expressed in terms of something known as f-stop. Okay, so what is f-stop? By formula, it is simply the focal length of the lens divided by whatever is the diameter of the aperture. So how much ever you open it. So focal length, lens. So this is also something that you must have heard about. So we have a lens of say 18 mm, we have a lens of 25 mm. So when we say it's an 18 mm lens, it is the focal length of that lens which is 18 mm. When we say 25 mm, it is the focal length of the lens which is 25 mm. So whatever focal length divided by whatever diameter you choose, that is going to give you something known as f-stop. It is a ratio basically, which actually tells you how much light enters, or rather how much light reaches to the center. Okay, so when you say f1 by 4, okay, or f by 4, generally it is mentioned as f by 4 or f by 2, it is always the fixed amount of time that fixed amount of light that reaches the sensor. For example, if you have, in fact it's there here, for example, if you have say 15 mm lens and you have a 200 mm lens, okay, in either case f by 4, when you set it to f by 4, the amount of light that is going to reach your sensor remains same, irrespective of whatever is the focal length. Okay, because your diameter will change accordingly. If your focal, whatever is the focal, if you're using a 50 lens, focal length lens, your diameter of the aperture changes accordingly when you set it to f4. Okay, so the amount of light that reaches the sensor still remains the same. So when you say this f4 or f5 or f by 5 or f by 22, the amount of light reaches the sensor irrespective of whatever focal length lens you use remains same, standard for all cameras, literally stand. So these are like kind of a fixed stops, that's why they are called f stops. So these are fixed stops. Okay, and how are they exactly divided, or how are they exactly, I mean, why these random numbers? Why don't I have it 1 2 3 4? So they are basically, just so that between any two stop the light halves. Okay, so if it is f1, then there is some intensity of light that goes in. F after that, f1 by 4, half the light will go in. Below, I mean, before that, next number f by 2, half the light will go in, and so on. Okay, so this follows from the fact that whatever light we gather is proportional to the area. Okay, square of diameter is proportional to the area. Area is basically the aperture area, the whole area that we are setting. Okay, so to half the life, then definitely we have to shrink it by √2. So if you simply see, so if you consider f1 as 1, and then the next one is f1 by 4, so it actually follows from these values. So here somewhere you will find like it is 3.96. The value comes out to be 3.96. So it is rounded off to the nearest integer. So all these values, which are fixed for almost all cameras, comes from here. So that is why there are these, you must be wondering why these random values. It comes from this particular idea that, okay, so this we discussed. Now this aperture not only controls the light that goes in, it also controls the depth of the field that you see. So when I say depth of the field, so like for example, I'm looking at you, right? Okay, I'm just looking at you. And so I'm focusing here. So the one sitting behind, I'm not able to focus. Okay, I'm focusing at you. So right now I'm only able to see you, and the objects behind you are all blurred. Okay, so what is my depth of field? It's only up to you. Everything behind you or everything in front of you is blurred for me. Okay, so camera also has this depth of field in an image. Okay, so what it tells me, like suppose let's forget about the night sky as of now. Let's try and understand. I am taking an image of some say I'm taking an image of this class. Okay, and I just hold my camera and I take an image. So there will be somewhere in between, one row will be focused perfectly, and the rows behind that will not be focused, and the rows in front of that will not be focused. But there will always be some range. Maybe 2 rows will be perfectly focused. Maybe 3 rows will be perfectly focused, and after that it won't be focused. Now this range of what will be perfectly focused, not a single point, but a range, is decided by what aperture you choose. Okay, so if you actually choose an aperture which is very small, then you actually focus lot of, the depth of focus increases. Okay, whereas if you use an aperture which is very big, the depth of focus reduces. Okay, now why this happens is something defined by circle of least confusion. So like just try to understand. I will just try to explain this with ray diagram itself. So let's just understand that this is a bigger aperture, this is a smaller aperture. Okay, so I have different objects placed, one at this distance, at this distance, and this distance. All these rays are passing through this aperture and getting focused somewhere, okay, where this should have been the sensor. Okay, but now what is happening? This particular object marked by red ray is focusing here. This particular object is focusing here. Okay, so there has to be some common point where we have this average. So this is dotted line is where my sensor is. Okay, so what will happen in this case? This object will be blurred, this object will be blurred. The only object that will be really nicely available or nicely seen will be the one focused by this green ray. Okay, marked by this green ray. Now this is for a bigger diameter. Now if I go with, aperture of say smaller diameter, now what is exactly happening is, oh, my diagram is not very clear. What exactly is happening here is, now this particular region where things are not that clearly focused. So this is where again green ray will perfectly focus. Green, I'm not talking about wavelengths here. I'm just marked it by different colors. Please don't get confused with wavelengths here. So my green point is focusing object, placed at green point is focusing here. Object placed at blue point is focusing here. But this entire region, since the diameter is much smaller, this entire region here near the sensor is much smaller in size than this region. So this is something known as circle of least confusion. So smaller this circle of least confusion, you are going to get more depth in your image. Okay, so that is precisely what we saw here. So smaller this circle of least confusion. Can you see this? Most of the flowers here are well focused. Are you able to see the difference between this and this image? But here, half of this, only this much range I see are okay focused. This is completely blurred. Mountains and all. So why? Exactly because of this particular circle of least confusion. So this is how aperture also alters the depth of your image. Okay, I'll go ahead. Something that is more relevant when it comes to night sky photography or astronomy to deal with aperture is the speed. Okay, so because I just told you that we can take photographs with say 30 seconds exposure, 1 minute exposure, and so on. If it's a faint object, we go for more and more time, say 1 minute, 2 minute, and more time basically. So when you have to take say multiple images, not just a single image, say you have an exposure of 1 minute, every time. So 1 minute, then some break, another minute, then some break. So imagine when I told you I took 70 photos, how much time I have spent, to take those photos. And what happens with that? I have the whole night, agreed. But whole night is not the same, right? Earth is rotating, sky keeps changing. So when I say I have the whole night to take the photos, that object may set after some point of time. Okay, so it's not that you can always go with, longer exposures and take multiple shots and all. So that's where many a times aperture helps, because if you have more light going into your sensor, the exposure time that you require is smaller always. So if you keep your aperture to maximum opening when you take night sky photos, then obviously you are going to require much lesser exposure time to get the image of same intensity basically. So that's where your aperture decides whether a particular photograph or particular lens is going to be fast or slow, because lesser time you require, you can take more images. More time you require, your basically camera means it's slow, the image is taken slow. So this particular thing is very much important when it comes to night sky photography. And generally most of us, whoever takes photos with DSLR or anything, we keep the aperture to maximum. We do not change it for all the objects. We keep the aperture to maximum opening. In most of the standard DSLRs, the maximum opening aperture that is available is f3.5. So we generally keep 3.5 or 3.8. Generally we keep it at that. We don't change that. So we always keep it at maximum possible opening, so that whatever exposure time decides how the image is going to be. So this is just to show you that how exposure times, if I am keeping a same aperture, not changing my aperture, then this is how the basically exposure time. Now when I've changes your image. So these exposure times are basically 1 by 400 seconds, 1 by 250 seconds, 1 by 1250 seconds, and so on. So these are actually in seconds. So this much of time for moon, see, it is 1 by 250 and all I'm showing. When it comes to deep sky objects like Milky Way and all, you don't definitely go with smaller exposure times. But moon is very bright, so you require literally that small exposure. So if you keep the same opening, same aperture, just by changing the shutter speed, you will be able to get variety or changes in your image. Now you can choose which is the best. Which is the best? Which image do you feel is the best? Everyone 1 by 250? So as far as moon is concerned, always 1 by 400 is best because you get a better contrast with the craters for moon than 1 by 250. So 1 by 400 always gives you much better this. So this is another example. By the way, the previous photos I had not taken. Moon photos I had not taken. This photo I have taken from Ladakh. So here again I took 30 seconds exposure and there were 25 frames. So I have a total exposure time of 12. I've stacked them together. So total exposure time of 12.5. So you just have different frames of 30 seconds and you just stack them together in a software. So how much is the total exposure time? Stacking is literally adding them together. So when you do that, the total exposure time that you ideally get is 12.5 minutes. So if you would have exposed your camera with 12.5 minutes, you would have got somewhat similar image. So that is how it is done. And the same thing I have taken with 15 second with 25 frames. You can clearly see the difference. The data here, all the brightness that I've got here is this is underexposed, I would say. I have not got much of the details. It is taken on the same day from the same place. Okay, but with two different shutter speeds. Okay, so question is, how do we choose the shutter speed? Okay, so it again depends upon focal length and something known as crop factor. I'll come to that in a while. So first try to understand the focal length part of it. So whatever focal length you choose, that will let you know what should be the exposure time you should use to get the best quality photograph. Okay, so for example, if I'm using 18 mm, so I showed you the Milky Way images. All the Milky Way images has been taken at 18 mm focal length, camera lens. So maximum shutter speed I should be using is 17.3. Okay, as per calculations. And I'm considering a camera Canon 600D, which has got a crop factor of 1.6. So I've just put those values. I'll come to crop factor again. So how did I take image with 30 seconds? Right? I showed you all the images which I've taken with 30 seconds, but my ideal speed should have been 17 seconds. Okay? So I was cheating you. I was literally cheating you. I've taken images with 30 seconds, but I'm showing you at such a small scale that you are not able to see the trails in those images. Okay? So let me zoom and show you. So this is one image where, can you see these trails? Trails are where the stars appear like a stick and not a point object. Right? Why? Because Earth is rotating. So if you keep your shutter open for a long time and if you do not move your camera with that, basically you do not track the sky as per Earth's rotation, then what you are going to get is the stars will appear as lines. Okay? So point is, if you choose a wrong shutter speed, if you keep your camera open for more than what is possible with that given focal length, what you are going to get is an image like this. Okay? So why? Why did I get good images with 30 seconds exposure? Okay, so point is, again, what I was trying to tell you is, so if I just zoom these images, you will see, I'm showing you a small image. You will see there are trails in this also. So there are trails in this image. There are trails in this image. But Milky Way, since we are actually going with, I'm just showing you at this scale, the images look better. They look brighter. But the correct image actually is to be taken with this particular exposure, that is 15 seconds. That should be less than 17 seconds for 18 mm. So this is the correct exposure time that you should have as per, So my point here is, why I'm showing you this is, these are all the calculations. They are fine, they are correct, they are perfect, they are precise, and this is what you should be doing. Okay. But sometimes in an image, some things look much better. That's why I told you it is not about the scientific part, it is more about the arts part. That, some images look better when you overexpose them, some images looks better when you underexpose them, and this is photographer's choice. This is totally photographer's choice. So here itself, if you see, I'm very happy with this. Why? Because I know there are trails, but I see a lot of stars. I see those dark patches in my Milky Way much better than what I see here. Okay, so generally that is the reason I prefer to go for Milky Way. Even though I get tiny trails, I prefer to go with 30-second exposure, so that my overall image actually looks good. That is the only thing. But yeah, so ideally the maximum shutter speed at 18 mm should have been this. And if I increase my focal length, then see the shutter speed, reduces even further. Okay, it should be 5.6. So more, focal length, then you'll have to reduce your exposure time further and further and further. Now, why this happens? This comes into this you'll understand by what I mean by focal length and what is the image or the field of view that you actually see. So now what happens? Now this is, say, roughly, I have said this, this particular focal length, this particular lens is set to, say, 30 mm focal length. Okay, so this f is 30 mm focal length. This is a, what you say, you can change the focal length of it, right? There is a range. You can change from 18 mm to 55 mm. These are standard lenses that you get with any DSLR. Okay, so here I have set it to roughly 30 mm, and setting it to 30 mm, I get some field of view, or I would use the word angle of view to be something alpha. Okay, same thing here. If I set it to 55 mm, I get some other angle of view, which is, again, I've marked alpha, but you can clearly see the difference. If my focal length is higher, the area that I'm covering, or the angle, the cone I am going to view, has reduced in the sky, right? Are you able to follow this? So if I increase my focal length as compared to this, the cone or the angle at which I'm going to view, the area in the sky that I'm going to view, has reduced. What it means? I'm magnifying or zooming onto certain region. Okay, so whenever I have to zoom onto certain region, I have to, like, for example, for Milky Way, I used 18 mm or wide angle lens because I wanted to cover the entire Milky Way band. But supposedly I want to take a photograph of moon. I'm not going to take 18 mm. 18 mm is going to give me that entire region of the sky. I want only moon. So I will use a lens. Maybe I will go for 250 mm straight away. Moon comes very nicely with 250 mm. Because I want to zoom onto it. Because I don't want this entire area. I just want to see the region where my object is. Okay, so that's how focal length, decides, higher the focal length, you're actually zooming onto the region. Okay, so how does that affect the trails I showed you? The minute you're going to zoom onto something, the effects of earth rotation are going to be felt much faster. Like, see, you're trying to see, say, 30-degree view in the sky through a telescope, just giving you an example, or through the lens, and then you're trying to see 3-degree view in the sky. So if you try to see the earth's rotation, the 30-degree thing will move much slower because you're seeing a big patch of the sky. But a 3-degree thing, you will feel that it has moved very fast. Now, what happens is, higher the focal length you use, you must have a tracking mount. For 18 mm for this, I only used a tripod and a camera because I'm seeing a huge patch of the sky. I don't feel the effects of rotation so much. But the minute you zoom onto it, you have to go for a tracking mount, otherwise you'll get star trails. Okay, so that is why when you go for like 5.6 seconds exposure, you will never get a good photograph with 5.6 exposure without a tracking mount. If you're going for 55 mm, you will always get star trails. Okay, so This is the same thing, angle of view, which I just discussed. So if it is a 20 mm, then you see this entire field. It is 50 mm, it is slightly reduced. And if you go for 500 mm, then what you see is only this much. So you are kind of zooming onto this ship. Okay, so this is the same thing that I discussed. Now, general term that we use in the sky is not angle of view, but field of view. Okay, now that again comes, no, we don't use angle of view. The standard term that we use is field of view. But field of view is actually a linear unit, has a linear unit. Angle of view is actually the angular patch that you're seeing in the sky. Field of view, you convert that angular patch into the area that will be projected onto your sensor. So field of view term comes from there, that you are actually converting. So this region, this linear area that you are going to basically imprint on your sensor, that is termed as field of view. And this alpha is basically angle of view, just difference in terminologies. Okay, so why? Because your sensor is flat, your sensor is rectangular or squarish flat sensor, and you want that linear area to be mapped onto your sensor. So that is the term field of view that you actually use. Now conversion is not that very difficult. I mean, you just take tan of alpha by 2, and what you eventually have is h upon h is the sensor size. Okay, so the dimension of your sensor, that is your h upon 2 into focal length is your that's how you define your angle of view. And then field of view is just fov into tan alpha by d is the actual distance to the object that you are trying to photograph. Okay, so that into this, so eventually you get your field of view, which is proportional to the sensor size, the focal length, and the distance. Okay, so now when we are talking about astronomical objects, does distance matter? Everything is infinity, right? You're taking image in the sky, so everything is infinity. You're focusing from infinity. Okay, so this parameter vanishes when it comes to your astrophotos. Okay, now my sensor size is going to remain fixed for my camera, one particular camera. This is also constant. So eventually your field of view only depends upon your focal length, right? So eventually your field of view only depends upon what focal length you choose. So that's a simple equation. You choose a lens, a focal length, or a lens with particular focal length to decide what image you want to take. Okay, so it's the same thing that I have discussed. So just to give you a visual idea about how field of view and focal lengths work. So this is Orion, entire constellation I can see taken at 18 mm. This, I have used a 250 mm lens. I see only this part. I've zoomed onto this part. And 250 mm, I get this view. Third image I took with 400 mm. This is the view. Exposure timings are different, but this is the view. But can you see the difference in the zooming? See this difference in the zooming at different focal lengths? Okay, I've magnified it further at 400 mm. Okay. So now coming to the crop factor. Now this actually is very important when you choose your cameras. Okay. So do we have time? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is really important when you have to choose your camera, because these days, most of the cameras that you get are crop sensors. So when I say crop sensors, what is the reference? The reference is the old film, which used to be 35 mm size. Okay, so all the sensors that you get, there are very few high-end cameras, DSLRs, which will give you a full size sensor of 35 mm. Rest all sensors that you get are crop sensors. Now how does that matter? It matters because this is your full frame. If your sensor is cropped, you actually see, so these I have marked with different sensors. So this is APS sensor. They are just names of the sensors, so you can ignore the names, that's perfectly fine. So this is one with this particular crop ratio, then this is one with different crop ratio, this is one with different crop ratio. What it is doing to my image? It is actually cropping out my image, right? I don't get to see what a full frame sensor would have shown me. I'm actually cropping out my image. Okay, so those factors are basically these factors 1.5. So how much will I crop? So how much this particular sensor will crop in comparison to the full frame are these factors 1.5, 1.6 and so on, which you need to add to your exposure this, depending upon which camera you use, and eventually you get what exposure time you should understand, you should get. So this is exactly what I was trying to show you. So this blue region is what should have been the the entire the full frame, but what you have is just this small sensor. So if the blue region would have observed the entire tree, my small sensor is only going to observe some portion of the tree, and the edges will be cropped. Now how do I rectify this? Obviously change my focal length. Okay, if I want, say suppose my camera to behave as it is, as it would show you with the full frame, obviously you change your focal length. Okay, so like just giving you an example, say supposedly I have Nikon 800, which is a full frame camera. Okay, its sensor is 35 mm sensor. Okay, and I take this entire image shown in yellow, okay, marked by yellow frame, say at 44 mm focal length. So the focal length that I have set for my lens is 44 mm. With aperture f2.8, we can ignore the aperture as for the time being. Okay, so now this area captured is marked in yellow. Now I want to capture the same area with another camera which does not have a full frame sensor. Okay, which is again I have taken Nikon only, which is D500 and has got a okay, has got a crop factor of 1.5. So what is my effective focal length that I'll be seeing? Full frame is this one, but if I multiply that crop factor with my focal length, I get 66 mm. So with my D500, I'm going to see an image which is equivalent to 66 mm in the full frame one. Are you able to imagine this? So in the full frame one with 44, I got this, right? But if I set 66 in the full frame one, I will get what is marked in red. Am I confusing you? I can see that on your faces. Okay, I'll repeat quickly. Okay, so I have a full frame sensor which is going to take my entire region I see in yellow, right? At 44 mm. Now, if I set, forget about the crop sensor as of now. If I set the focal length to 66 mm in the full frame sensor, what is the area I'm going to see here? Marked in red. I'm zooming in, right? I've increased my focal length, so I'm zooming in, right? But the other camera, which has got a crop factor of 1.5, actually sees full frame as the red mark thing, which is equivalent to 66 mm in the older camera. So that is the difference. This is the crop factor. Now this is set because you need to have some standard unit. Okay, because photography started with films and 35 mm was considered to be the standard sensor size. So all the new sensors that now you are developing, there should be a standard reference point. So all the new sensors now give you this crop factor just to tell you that what should have been the image size if it would have been a 35 mm sensor. That is the only thing that crop factor tells you, and it is fixed for every sensor or every camera that you buy. Okay. So that is what I wanted to tell you, and it's the same thing. I mean, what I just explained. So conversely, if I want to shoot, this yellow frame with my D500, which is a crop sensor, then rather than 44 mm, I will have to use 23.3 mm, 29.3 mm focal length, which will give you the zoomed out image, not zoomed in image, okay, of yellow frame. Yeah. Coming to the next and the most important parameter which we have to use for photography, astrophotography especially, is the ISO. So apart from shutter speed and apart from focal length, one important factor that really decides how your image will look like is ISO. So ISO basically controls the sensitivity of each pixel in your camera basically. So how sensitive you make it to, you increase the gain. To talk in terms of electronics, you actually play with the gain of each pixel in your camera, and that decides what should be the sensitivity of those pixels to the light that is coming. So ISO, if it is 200 lowest, you see nothing is seen. By the way, I have not taken these images, okay? It has been picked up from this particular this. So if you see ISO 200, I hardly see the Milky Way patch. If I increase the, so, and by the way, it is, the exposure time is same, the aperture is same. All I'm changing is only one parameter, that is ISO, and I'm keeping the same focal length as well. Okay. So then I increase the ISO. Is it the wire? Sorry. I increase the ISO, I get image which is slightly brighter. I increases further, much brighter. This is really very bright. So I've come to 1600. Okay. Most of the modern cameras have ISO up to 6400 now. Okay. So that is, or even 12,000. Few cameras even have 12,000 ISO. So I'm happy. So with shorter exposure time and bigger focal length, if I just simply increase the ISO, I should not get trails because I'm going with shorter exposure time, right? I should still get a sharp image. I do, because I'm increasing the gain, I'm increasing the sensitivity of my pixels, so I'm getting brighter and brighter image. But the trade-off is the noise. If you play with the sensitivity of the sensor, you will increase the light, agreed, but you will also capture more and more noise. The signal to noise ratio will really go bad. Okay, so having a higher ISO is not always a good option, even though it will give you a brighter image. Now, this also depends upon where you are taking the photograph from. This is my personal experience. If I take images from Mumbai for more than 6400, I would say 1600 to 3200 is the best ISO for Mumbai region, where it is hot and humid. But the same thing when I actually went to Ladakh, I took images with 1200 ISO and clean images, no noise, very less noise. Okay, now that also depends upon air pollution, temperature, humidity, everything. Okay, so it is not only about because you're making those pixels more sensitive, so it also depends upon environmental conditions. So increasing ISO to after a particular value is not really a good idea. You always have to have a balance between focal length, exposure time, and ISO to get good images, the right what you say, the values of all the sensors, all the parameters. Okay. Now, coming to sensors, I've been talking about sensor for a very long time. Most of the sensors that we use now, mobile phones or even DSLRs, they're all CMOS sensors. Okay. Earlier, people, even now, many of the high-end telescopes, rather high-end missions, do use CCDs, but most of the uh, cameras that we use now have CMOS sensors. Okay. The reason is they are cheaper, they are more, what you say, compact, and they require, or rather, they are faster than CCD. Okay. So to understand this, let me quickly just show you how a CCD works so that you'll be able to, compare. So generally how a CCD works is you have, basically photosynthesis sensitive material here, and you have, so if this, you can consider this each one to be, say, 1 pixel. So generally you have this photosynthesis material. So whenever the photon falls on this, you have a pool of electrons that are, by photoelectric effect, pool of electrons that are generated just below that pixel. Okay, these pixels are exposed. So this is where you actually take an image. So if you're going to expose an image, say for 4 seconds. So for 4 seconds, photons are falling on these pixels, and you will have proportional amount of electrons generated under those pixels. Now comes the readout time. That once those electrons are generated, you have to measure how much those electrons are generated. So what generally happens in a CCD is you actually move that pool of electrons from 1 pixel to another pixel electronically. Okay, by simply changing the voltages of these pixels, basically PN junctions, and you transfer those charges from one place to another, and eventually you have a readout, what you say, a row where you read out each pixel individually. So what is happening in a CCD is you're actually moving the charge from 1 pixel to another and so on. You're actually moving them in one dimension, but you're actually moving them and reading each pixels individually. Okay. Now this takes time. So if you have an exposure of 4 seconds, you will require few milliseconds for the readout after every exposure that you give. Okay. In case of CMOS, each pixel has its own converter. Now these are all analog signals that you get. So in CCD, when all these pixels are read out, eventually you convert it into digital signals, and that's what gives you as a image or voltage, in terms of voltage basically. In case of CMOS, each pixel has its own converter. So whatever electrons are generated, again by photoelectric effect, they are read out then and there. Okay. So in case of CMOS, it's quick, because the whole, whatever, say you have what, 640 by 480 pixel size camera or sensor, then all those number of pixels are read simultaneously. In case of CCD, you will have to actually transfer things. Now there are pros and cons for both. In case of CCD, it's a single converter which is converting your analog to digital, so the noise is much less. In case of your CMOS, you have individual readers, so there is possibility of more noise. But with recent CMOS, advances in CMOS, this parameter is kind of taken care with advances in CMOS. So currently now, for most of the optical observations, people go with CMOS rather than CCDs. Another drawback with CCDs is, again, you need to cool down. CCDs have to be operated, otherwise you will have thermally generated noise a lot. Okay, so CCDs need to be cooled down a lot. So that is also another issue. So people now prefer CMOS over, CCDs. Okay. So how exactly are, cameras look? The general purpose cameras look. So the film used to be something like this. You had different, you could actually tune, they had emulsifiers. So you could actually tune each layer sensitive to particular wavelength. Okay. And you could get, say, full frame image in one particular wavelength, which was always possible with a film. Now we have kind of mixed layout, something like this. So if this is the size of your sensor with different pixels, then those pixels, each of those pixels are kind of made sensitive to each color. Okay, so in fact, whatever cameras we use in our mobile also have similar kind of CMOS, mostly CMOS structures basically. So you have each pixel made sensitive to different color, and eventually what you get is kind of a composite image. Okay, some high-end CMOS and CCDs do have separate filters which you can actually tune and make, again, just like films, you can make one entire image sensitive to one particular color. And of course, but these particular CCDs or CMOS are more expensive. So the most general purpose ones are these ones. Now what is the difference between this and this? Why these are more expensive and these are much better, and why these are not? Why? Because you are literally reducing your color sensitivity to 1/3. Right? So if you have 640 by 480 pixels, number of pixels, so 1/3 of them will be sensitive to green, 1/3 of them will be sensitive to blue, and so on. Okay, but here you generally get, this matters in an astronomical image when you have to extract data based on wavelength. Okay, that it is, what kind of wavelengths is, just spoke about multi-wavelength astronomy. So having this particular sensors are anyways better when you have to extract good amount of data. But for general purpose, for photography, these are pretty good enough. They do give you pretty good data, or rather images. Okay, so maybe I will skip this part and go to mounts first. Okay, so coming to mounts, I've been talking about using a tracking mount and moving with the speed of the earth so that we don't get trails. So there are different types of mounts that you can actually use. One is the simplest one, which is alt-azimuth mount, which moves with azimuth, that is along your horizon, okay, and the altitude in the sky. Okay, so it has two axes of rotation. One is azimuth, which is along your horizon, and other is up and down in the sky. Okay, so your telescope moves. This is the simplest kind of a telescope. This is also similar. This particular mount is known as Dobsonian. But the most useful one for astrophotography is this equatorial mount. Okay, why this is more useful is, one, it can help you set a telescope compatible to your location. Are you aware of these systems, equatorial system, and no, it's not done? No. Okay, then I won't go into the details. Okay, fine. So what is more interesting about this particular, why this mount is more important is, or more compatible is, you have a third axis which actually points to your pole star. Okay, now pole star is at a height from your location depending upon your latitude. right? So if it's what 20, 21 degrees latitude here, then your pole star will appear roughly 20, 21 degrees high up in the sky, right? So you just fix this axis along the pole star. You have another axis which will go round and round along this axis to the pole star. That's how actually sky moves. You know, our Earth's rotation axis is pointing towards the pole star. So all the other stars appear to be moving around the pole star. So this particular telescope actually tracks the sky. This particular mount actually tracks the sky in that way. So you have one axis which you fix pointing to the pole star. Another axis is actually going to go round and round the pole star. The third axis what you have is actually perpendicular to that axis. Okay, so there is, if this is the pole star, you will have one axis going around like this, third axis is kind of perpendicular to that. Okay, so this mount becomes much easier if you just simply put a simple DC motor to this mount with proper systems, geared systems, then this mount will actually help you track or move with the speed of Earth's rotation. Okay, which helps in photography. So for most of the, or rather all photography, this particular mount is the best one. And then how do we attach the cameras? So if you have a telescope, one way to attach a camera, this is the telescope similar to what we are going to see today, the telescopes that are present here. So if you attach a camera, you generally get a T adapter and a T ring like this for every camera. So Nikon will have a different adapter, Canon will have a different adapter, and so on. And you can simply attach it where your eyepiece goes and you can take photographs. Another way what people do sometimes is, if you don't really want to use a telescope focal length, then what people do is they mount a camera on the back of a telescope. Okay, so camera has its own lens and it will take photographs from the lens, from that lens itself. But telescopes helps you to find that object, and this is made parallel to your telescope. So whatever object comes in the telescope, the object will also come in the camera. So this is something known as piggyback arrangement. So many people even do that. Okay. And the third type of mounting is, again, if you have good lens and you don't really need a telescope, but you want to track with the speed of the Earth, then this wedge will help you to set your latitude, and then you can see there is a motor connected to this which will eventually track the object or track with the speed of the Earth. So this is also wedge arrangement that people use for doing astrophotography. And these days DSLRs are also getting outdated and we have mobile cameras. So there are lot of adapters so this kind of adapters you get which directly go into your eyepiece holder. So your, the way you could mount your DSLR, you can mount your mobile cameras also. Or there are these kind of adapters where do not really go into your eyepiece holder, rather they fit around your eyepiece holder and you can take images. Or again, directly, as I said, for, what I'm sure most of you must have done, just directly taking images. Okay. So I was talking about taking images by stacking them. So just to give you a comparison, which is a better method? So if I want to really precisely track with the speed of the Earth, I really need the equipment which is expensive, really expensive. Okay, so the more precision tracking you get, more the cost of that mount will go on increasing. Okay, so if you want to really kind of find a balance between, like, uh, a low cost equipment, but say a moderate tracking. So when I say moderate tracking, you get a good tracking without trails, say for 2 minutes. Okay, so in that case, you can take multiple images, stack them together and get an image. But this particular image, the same, it's a horseshoe nebula. This one I have taken. This one has been taken by a very famous astrophotographer, David Lane. And can you see the difference between the two images? So exposures is same, 8 minute, but a single shot tracking, 8 minutes with 12 frames stacked together. Which is better? Don't say this is better because I have taken it. You tell me what is better and why it is better. First one or second one? Okay. Yeah, it's missing. The feature is missing because I've stacked them together actually. That was what my point was. So actually, This photograph is way better when it comes to data, because all this nebulosity, the Horset is basically a dark nebula. Okay, it's blocking the background light. So all this region, if you see, because of the stacking, wrong stacking, I would say, I have lost it. See, when I said stacking, I'm actually using certain softwares to stack it. So it's not like literally addition. It will use either a median filter or something, while stacking. So all this region in between, I've actually lost data. Of course, I did not even use a very high-end equipment. Point is, with direct exposure, you always get better. But as I said, you really need to have a very expensive equipment to have, to a mount that will allow you to track for 8 minutes. So that is why the trade-off is either you use a kind of a moderate level equipment and get images like this, which at amateur level, okayish for me. But if you really want to extract some data or make it even better, then anytime direct images with higher exposure periods and good tracking equipment is always good. Okay, so just to give you the comparison. Yeah. So just last few slides. Now we discussed about camera, we discussed about mounts. What happens, or how do you actually take images? Click kiya, image aaya is not taking photos. Okay, so when it comes to astrophotography, you have to take not only the object, but you have to also take some other images, something known as dark frames and flat frames. Okay, so what are these exactly? So I just mentioned about thermally generated noise in a CCD. Okay, so dark frames is something where you take an image keeping your shutter off, or rather a cap off. The easiest way is to keep your cap off. So you don't want any light to enter your camera, and you take an image with the same exposure time as you would have taken. So if I'm taking, say, Milky Way image at 30 seconds, then I will keep a cap on my camera and take an image for 30 seconds. So I don't want any light to enter the camera, but I want to record that what are the thermally generated points that I see on my image. So like, for example, why I need to do this, when I take a photograph, consider a black and white photograph for example. So I have stars which will appear white spots, right? Lots of stars, and they will appear at white spots. What if all those white spots are not stars? Some of them will be this thermally generated data, okay, which you want to subtract. You want to remove it from your actual image because they are not stars. So that is the reason why I'm doing this. So after, or generally I do this. So dark frames I generally take after my imaging is over. Why? Because if suppose I am imaging, say, for 2 hours, my camera is heated enough to give me the data of dark frames. Okay, so I generally take dark frames after, say, I have taken, say, somewhat 50 images, or sometimes in middle, but not at the start, for sure. Because my camera will be really cool at the start, and I will not get the exact, thermally generated photons. Because what will happen is, in the first image that I take, and in the last image that I take 2 hours later, there will be a lot of noise in the last image, but not in the first image. Okay, so I want to take dark frames somewhere either in between or at the end of my photography session. Okay, so what I do is, ideally, so this is, so maybe it's not, my bad. So I have written temperatures here, but may not be visible for you. So here it is minus 50 degree. Should have changed the color. This particular image has been taken at minus 50 degree. This particular image of dark frame has been taken at 11 degree ambient temperature. Okay, what is the difference? You can see all this. These are not stars. Okay, these are all thermally generated noise. So this is how it looks. So 11 degrees is the normal temperatures that we have in most of the countries. Okay, so this is at 11 degrees. So imagine what would be at 25 and 30 degree that we have in India. So this is all the noise that you have to subtract from your image. Okay, but at minus 50 degree, this is cooled the CCD. Hardly anything is seen. Okay, but as I said, you cannot always. There are some inbuilt coolers and fans in many CCDs, but not in every. Okay, so generally what you get as a dark frame is something like this for most of our photographs. Okay, so that is something that you really have to take. If you don't take, your image is going to be very noisy. Okay, another thing that you need to take is flat frames. Now, what are flat frames? We have different pixels. Each pixel is kind of a PN junction, right? We may have created all the pixels exactly accurate, same parameters, everything, but still all pixels are not going to be equally sensitive. They are different PN junctions eventually, so they are not going to be equally sensitive. Okay, so the light that they sense, even if uniform intensity light falls on all the sensors, what they record is still going to be slightly different. Okay, now again, I want this difference to be removed from my image, because this is the defect of the sensors. This is not, the difference in intensity is not because of the object that I'm shooting. Say if I have taken these Milky Way images, you can see there are some dark lines, there are some bright spots. Now these are actual bright and dark spots in the Milky Way, but some bright and dark spots can be introduced because of my sensor itself. So I don't want them to be in my image. So another thing, another frames that I need to take before generally is the flat frames. Okay, so how I take them? A crude way. Generally, how they are taken is, you have a uniformly illuminated screen and you take a photograph of that. And since the screen is uniformly illuminated, all your pixels should record the same in illumination. But that doesn't happen. You can see these are the images where the edges have, this is something known as vigneting. Okay, so edges have become darker. Okay, now this are also because of the lens effect. These are also because of dust, and this is also because sensors not sensing the uniform brightness uniformly. Okay, so here all these patches that you see are actually dust. So this also gives you a problem, because you can only clean the dust that is there on the top of the lens, but not what goes inside. So your camera, you need to take flat fielding for all these factors basically. Okay, so you take a dark frame, you take a flat frame, and eventually this is the process that you do. Again, you don't have to do it manually. There are a lot of softwares which does for you. All you have to do is upload your flat frame separately, upload your dark frame separately, and your light frame separately, and eventually you get a final image. So this is your actual image. I've just taken an image of Ring Nebula that I had shot a few years ago. So this is an actual image. It has got flat filled frames, it has got dark frames also, which I'm yet to subtract. This is my dark frame and this is my flat frame with dark frame. Right? When I'm taking a flat frame, there will be thermal noise in that frame also. So I have to subtract dark frame from both my flat frame as well as my actual image. So these are all the raw images that you get. This is where you have subtracted the dark frames. Can you see the difference? This was all noisy. Now those speckles have gone away, right? Because I have subtracted, and these are the actual images. I'm showing you actual images like taken. So these are all the speckles that are going away, right? And then finally, finally, I kind of divide these two. I normalize them, because whatever is the intensity for each pixel that is recorded here, I want to normalize it with my actual image frame. Okay, and what you get is a clear contrast image eventually. So this has to be done for literally every image that you take before stacking. But as I told you, it's not so difficult. All you have to do is just take these 3 set of images and the software do the rest of the job for you. Okay, so there's something known as Deep Sky Stacker, which actually, and Registack, used for different purposes. So when it comes to nebulosity or Milky Way or something, lot of stars basically, Deep Sky Stacker will help you. You have to upload all these 3 types of frames and it will help you get the final image that I showed you. Okay. A Registack is a stacking software which is generally used for planetary photography. Okay, so I'll show you both. Okay, and then of course after that, to make it beautiful without losing the data. When I say beautiful, you may change a contrast a bit, or you may change slightly the tone of the image. But remember, when you are going for astrophotography, it is always photographer's choice, I agree. But you don't want a particular image to be drastically changed. Like for example, if you're taking an image of a Jupiter, you don't want to make it blue. What I mean to say. So you have full freedom of how you want the image to look, but there is no point in tempering the colors to a large extent. You can only temper it slightly. If you don't have to take out any scientific data, you can slightly temper it just to make it look beautiful, but not like drastically changing it. Okay. So this is just a screenshot of this deep sky stacker. So you can see there are various options. I don't know if you're able to read. So there are dark files, flat files, and all this, and picture files that you can actually upload. And then eventually it will ask you how you want to stack. You want a intersection, or you want a kind of an average out between different frames, and eventually it will give you. So this is the unprocessed stack version of the same Horsehead Nebula which I showed you previously. That was the processed version. This was the unprocessed, only stacked version. Okay, so after that I worked on it to change slightly the levels so that I get a better contrast and better colors. I did not temper the colors much, but what you saw previously eventually came from this particular stacked image. Okay, stacked, which is minus the dark, minus the flat. Okay, so few photos I would like to show you. So this one particular photo I have taken close to Mumbai. This took me some time, or rather 2 months, to process, because it has 3 parts. One is the actual Milky Way, then the land object, then I had to process the reflection of the Milky Way separately. Again, you can mask it. It's not that I literally cut the image in pieces and process it, but there are masking options in Photoshop where you can actually do that. But each mask requires a separate processing. So this was one photograph, again, 18 mm, 20 seconds I have taken. So here again, if you actually zoom in and see, most of these stars will have trails. Okay, so that's the whole point. But in an image, so this is Perseus arm, another arm of Milky Way, opposite arm of Milky Way, which is normally not seen with naked eyes from any of the cities. I have only seen it twice with naked eye, just twice, where the sky, it was actually, um, there was some load shedding, and I was on the top of a mountain and pitch dark on a new moon day. That was one time, and I saw other time from a fort actually. So only twice I have seen this. This passes actually through Orion. In fact, it is nicely visible right now in the evening, but we won't be able to see that. So that is the Perseus hum. This particular galaxy I have taken from Tiafa Terrace, and the telescope that I used was very much similar to the telescopes that you have, but 11-inch, and with slightly different setup, that there was a wedge used for it. So this is almost 1 minute shutter speed, 53. So total exposure that was there was 53 minutes exposure, and I've taken same day to Pleiades cluster, same setup, slightly less exposure of 43 minutes. And Pleiades comes beautifully even with lesser exposure. Actually, it's a very nice object. And Rosette Nebula, again, this is 50-second shutter speed that I have used, a tracking mount, of course. So total 75 frames. So much higher exposure you get it here. Still, very frankly, this blue, circles that I get, they are the effects of tracking, which I sorry, not tracking, stacking, which I shouldn't have got. So maybe if I again process it. So this is also something that I always do. It's never once that you process. So generally it takes me to stack and finish the processing. If I say, suppose, do the observation for tonight, the next day, almost whole day goes into stacking, and then you process it for another 2 or 3 hours. So it's a 2 to 3 day job that you generally do. And not always, there is no standard procedure to, process. Every image will have a different processing. This, like if it's a nebula, it will be different. If it's a galaxy, it will be different. If it's a solar system object, it is going to be different, and so on. So this is something that it comes mainly with judgment. I cannot really tell you that, okay, there are certain steps that I definitely follow, but these steps are different for different photographers. So it's not nothing concrete that you can do, or I can tell you that, oh, you have to follow this, that will give you images. So you can repeat. So this is the screenshot of Registry. So this particular, as I told you, this is useful for solar system object tracking, stacking. So generally, when you take image of a planet, not moon and sun, generally when you take an image of a planet, you don't really take shots. You take a movie, basically of 3 minutes or 1 minute rather. I generally go with 1 minute. So generally you have 30 frames per second. So with a 1 minute exposure, you at least get around 2000 frames. I still haven't, rather, I must have not searched or whatever. I haven't found a good software which will separate out good frames from bad frames when I take a movie. So I manually pick out, say, 1,000 best frames from those movies. I separate out the frames, of course, from the movie, and then pick out 1,000 best frames, load it into register, and then you have to mark these edges in register. All you have to tell the software is where are the edges that you want to stack. So this is a single image of Saturn, single frame that I've removed from the movie. Okay, there are 1,000 frames that I'm going to stack now, and I'm going to stack as in I've stacked, but this is a single image. Are you appreciating this image? Don't say yes, please. I am not. I am not. Okay, I just, since it is a ring, I just know it's a Saturn. But I'm not appreciating image. This is something that I have got from a single frame from my this. But if I stack together, this is the final output that I got after 1,000 frames. Of course, this one image that I showed you was really bad, but you have to really pick out some best frames and stack together. And this is from the same set, by the way. This is from the same set. So when you're taking a movie, some of the images will be totally blurred. Some will be sharper enough. And yeah, I do it manually. There must be better softwares which will be help you to, kind of pick out now with AI. But I have literally done this manually. I picked out 1,000 frames manually and stacked it. Okay, so this is the image that I got. This was taken in 2013. Okay, and you can see the shadow of the Saturn on the rings itself. Okay, and this is the Cassini division that you are, of course, but not more details. It is taken from an 8-inch telescope, 8-inch Cassegrain telescope. And moon, again, for a 400 mm refractor. Crescent moon, something that I always love to take. And this was a comet Lovejoy, again in 2013. Stacking a comet is a pain. Neither Registack nor Deep Sky Stacker helps you to stack comet well, because the problem with comet is there are stars in it, there is nucleus with a lot of nebulosity around, and there is a tail. So none of these softwares, though there is a comet mode in Registack, auto comet mode, it's not really that great. So I used some 37 odd frames for this, stacked them manually in Photoshop, and it was a task to get this image. And yeah, this particular image, sir mentioned about it. This has been taken from TIFR. This is again a Milky Way. So this is the peloton building of TIFR. Here you can see the red dots. And yeah, so this now, there were some around 150 frames that I took that one particular night. Again, this was taken sometime in April. And out of that, only 71 frames, I have stacked this image. I've got this image. Now, what happened to the rest of the frames? Why I didn't use it? Because there were clouds. So, just for fun, I stacked those clouds in the form of a video and Earth's rotation. So, these were the clouds actually, so I just stacked this processed image onto the clouds and made a GIF file of it. So, this is just for fun. So, yeah, so that's all. Like, if you have any questions, anything. So one thing I just showed you, like, all these things which are more of artistic, looking good and all. It doesn't mean that you cannot get out data out of it. Okay, there are a lot of ways you can also extract depending upon what object you choose, and also even with normal amateur level astrophotography, you can still get. I know many people who have been doing this variable star projects and all, where they keep taking photograph of the star every day, and eventually you are able to get out what is the intensity curve for. So such projects you also can do with a normal, even with your mobile camera. So it's not like you cannot do, but it is always good if you really want to extract data. It is always good to do dark framing and flat framing before you get the actual data.
Okay, so anyone's having questions?
Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Actually, you said that the flat frame is taken before imaging the frames. Like when you take the frames, before that you take the flat frames.
Yeah.
And the dark frames are taken after the imaging. So won't the flat frames lack some thermal photos?
It does definitely. But generally what we do is, not every time you will have uniform illumination option for you to take photographs, for every time you go for sky observation or something. So generally what we do is we take flat frames twice a season. See, because we use, when I say twice a season, say like suppose if I start my observation sessions from say November to April, suppose it. So I'll take one set of flat frames, maybe 10 frames or 20 frames, keep it as a master frame in my deep sky stacker. And then again, maybe this was a winter time that I took. Then again, maybe March comes, I take another one day, I take and use those same frames for most of the photographs. So not that flat framing is not, because that is the a kind of not exactly a defect but a characteristic of your sensor. Of course there will be thermally generated noise depending on the temperatures, but that is more of a characteristics of your sensor, and that is what you want to normalize with your actual image. So it's okay to have like being taken once and used for multiple images. That is not really so much dependent on your transient temperature, except for the dark frames.
So,
Yeah.
ma'am, the minimal amount of the thermal photons that it's negligible according to the photo.
Yeah, but that's what I said. We take it once during each season. So when around winter time we take one, so which will be kind of valid for November, December, Jan, I would say. And then around February and March, when actually the summer and the temperature, so that time we take another set of flat frames, and that's how we do. So see, ideal way will always be to take it every time you do, but that is not always feasible because you need to have. There is also a very very, I would say, vague or a crude trick that we do. So one way is to actually have a screen with actual uniform illumination. Another way, what we do is generally at the sunset, we place a kind of a screen or a white cloth without any wrinkles or something, say north south of sun, so that it is uniformly illuminated. You don't want sunlight perpendicular to it, like you want it north south as in east west. I would rather say the cloth goes east west, and then we take a photograph of that. Okay, so you are either facing north or south when you take. So that's a very crude way, but that's a very crude way. But for these images, it does give you, but it has to be, say, without wrinkles. It has to be straight and like mounted properly. And so it's a, during twilight you get that kind of a uniform illumination much better. So we generally do that. So that is one way, very crude way, but we do that. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else having questions? Please raise your hand. Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, like in one of the slides, you showed the comparison between like when we decrease the aperture, the flower, the comparison of flowers, we can focus in a single like some part, but in the other frame, you showed the complete focus. But if there is a situation where we have to focus on two exactly different objects, like two people standing in different distances, how can we do that?
So what is the distance? It depends on that. So if particular aperture is giving you a particular depth, so if those two people are within the depth, they will get focused. But if they are quite far away, and so it's basically how you choose your aperture. So what depth? So if you are using a big aperture, then maybe only a front person or a back person will get focused. But if you are using, say, smallest possible aperture on your frame, and those two people are within that range of the depth which is given by that smallest aperture, then they will get focused. So it depends. It depends on what you choose, basically.
So we can actually focus on both of the objects
Yeah,
simultaneously.
somewhat. Yes, it's not exactly pin focus like what you will get exactly at the focal, but it's kind of a depth. It will be still better. So the way I showed you, like 30-second exposure, it gives me trails, but in an image it is not seen. So when I say depth, it is always like that. It is not like the exact focal point will still be whatever is the exact focal point, but slightly before that and slightly after that, in an image, still objects will appear focused. They will be not completely focused as the exact point, but still good enough for the image. That is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next one. Anyone's having any other question? I don't think so. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for such an enriching session.